Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our fiscal year 2025 budget workshop. This is our second workshop. Good morning to the commissioners and county administrator and staff and all of those that are visiting with us this morning. I first of all want to express our condolences to Commissioner O'Keefe. It's good to see you, and we're certainly praying for you in the passing of your father. Is there anything we can do? Just let us know.
Thank you very much. I've appreciated all the support and continued thoughts for our family.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, Commissioners, this is the second of our budget workshops. And I know that everyone has reviewed the material, and we've been briefed by County Administrator and Ms. Bradley and staff. And so we're going to begin the workshop with the presentation from my County Administrator and from his staff. But before we get started, I just want to commend my fellow colleagues for the congeniality that we have displayed through this budget process. And we know, looking at the budget, and of course the county administrator and his staff, they start day one. After this is passed, they'll start looking at the budget for next year. So it's not an easy process. And we all know that as far as resources are concerned, we never have enough resources to address all the needs in our community. But I just want to thank our commissioners and the county administrator and the staff for this constructive deliberation, and again for the congeniality that we share on this board. As we know, the county administrator is presenting a preliminary balanced budget, and it includes previous directions that we have given to him and the staff. And it's just a couple of areas that I want to mention, because we did quite a bit of input at our first budget session. We approved strategic priorities as a commission. We looked at outside funding agencies, approved those. There are some statutory requirements, including funding for our constitutional officers that are in this preliminary budget that we have. We have some Article 5 responsibilities as far as our judicial officers. We have some increased funding and mandates on the state level, which the county administrator has included in this preliminary balanced budget. We have critical infrastructure needs. And of course, we all know after the severe storms that we've experienced here the last couple of months, we know that those needs have been increased because of the devastation. The budget includes replacement of ARPA revenues, and of course, the provision of quality daily services to the citizens in our county. So, commissioners, as we hear from the county administrator and his staff, we have a preliminary balanced budget, and for 13 consecutive years, our county administrator and his staff have brought us balanced budgets with no recommended a raise in the millage rate. And so the county administrator is before us today with no recommendation about increasing that. So a lot of work has been done. We recognize the county administrator and his staff, but they've done a lot of work to bring us to this second workshop today. And what I want to make sure is that all the commissioners have the opportunity to be heard, to express your opinion about the budget, and share your thoughts with us. And I just want to remind the commissioners that we do have a policy that we don't have the 3-minute audience participation during the budget workshop. So it's basically going to be the county administrator and his staff, and then comments from the commissioners. And I would, as chair, like to adhere to that policy and not have any audience input, so that we can be fair and equitable to those that have tried to speak before and we haven't allowed them to, and then today, so that we can treat all citizens equal and fair. Okay, having said that, I would like to now turn it over to our great county administrator and his staff to begin their presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, commissioners, and welcome to your second, and as the chair said, maybe your final budget workshop of the 25 budget cycle. We do have a placeholder for an additional workshop in July. And at the end of today's workshop, commissioners, of course, the board can determine if that additional workshop is still necessary. At this time, the board has provided, Madam Chair, a lot of direction to this point in the process, which is reflected in the preliminarily balanced budget before you that we'll go over today in some detail. As the chair said, that includes funding priorities and decisions that the board has made throughout the process, and that you do in a very deliberate, very sequential, step-by-step manner throughout the process, making decisions with the best information as it becomes available, and of course making necessary adjustments all along the way. As you often hear me say, commissioners, the development of the annual budget is not something that we engage in one time during the year, but it is a continuous annual ongoing process that reflects the board's longer-term fiscal policies and priorities for the community. Of course, a big part of that process, commissioners, and you'll hear me say this a lot today, is that we continue to place the county in the very best position possible to handle whatever comes our way. And we've been very effective, and we've got a long track record of doing that through this process over the years. Something else you've heard me say, commissioners, maybe too often, is that, but I'm not sure it can be overstated, is that there are no two budget cycles that are the same. Certainly they all present unique challenges, and this year is no exception. Just since we met at your last budget workshop, commissioners, in April, as you know, we experienced a once in a 200-year rain event that we all now know as the bicentennial storm. We experienced not one, not two, but 3 tornadoes that touched down in our community in one morning. And we have a 2024 hurricane forecast. Now, get this, which predicts an 85% chance of between 17 and 25 named storms. And if you do the math, commissioners, because it's budget day, that's almost every letter of the alphabet for those named storms. Now, commissioners, we to this point in the fiscal year, in the 24 fiscal year, of course, with all of that, as well as Idalia and other events, we have approximately, well, just based on the tornadoes, we've got approximately $7 million in debris removal costs associated with the tornadoes. And this is the part, commissioners, where I have to depart from my written comments. I was going to say that we are still anticipating a declaration from FEMA, but I'm happy to announce to the board that we just received word that the president signed the declaration, which includes public assistance and individual assistance. And the way that works is that's not always a certainty. And so, in fact, you know, we've all been sort of treading lightly around that. So today, I didn't want that to, I realize that's very big news. And of course, as Madam Chair indicated, we've got ample time today. We don't think we'll need it all for the budget, and certainly we can talk more about what that entails. But again, just as of very recently this morning, we received confirmation that the president has signed the federal declaration, which will include public assistance, which I'll remind the commission public assistance allows us to seek reimbursement on our costs, on the government's costs. The individual assistance is the process that will allow citizens to seek individual assistance through that process. So we could talk more, commissioners, about what that entails. But as and again, I should say reimbursed in part. I'll come back to that later. But commissioners, again, I realize that's very big news, and it is thematic. It is consistent because the preliminarily balanced budget that you have before you today continues, again, to position the county to meet these significant challenges of the day and beyond. With that being said, commissioners, I'm going to get the ball rolling here with a quick overview. Rashonda Bradley, our Director of Management and Budget, will provide more detail. We have others around the table who will chime in and provide a couple of updates and deal with a couple of loose ends. And of course, commissioners, we're here to answer any questions you have and ultimately to receive your direction. To begin, commissioners, and you heard me say this back in April, that we've budgeted our way through a great recession, natural disasters, a global pandemic, record high inflation, and most recently, more severe and more frequent severe weather events. So there's not a whole lot that we haven't seen and haven't been able to deal with and address efficiently and responsibly through our budget process. Commissioners, as you will recall at your April workshop, this year could have proven to be even more challenging, believe it or not, as we faced very drastic impacts due to the FRS legislation that was proposed earlier in the year. I know that seems like a long time ago now, believe it or not. Legislation did pass, however, which does provide for an inflationary adjustment to the homestead exemption, which will be on the November ballot, and if passed, will have a budget impact in 26. I say this because we expect more legislative cost shifts when the legislature convenes in the spring, which, in addition to everything else I've said so far, is why it is so important that, again, we continue to place the county in the very best position we possibly can for such impacts, understanding that we have very little time often in terms of advance warning. I'll give you a great, for example, just 12 days ago, commissioners, we received word from the state of Florida that our mandatory Medicaid payment is increasing by nearly $500,000. Again, these are things which happen throughout the budget process, and again, the timeline that we're on affords us the opportunity to adjust to those things. But again, it's a good example of how quickly things change through the process. But at this point in the process, commissioners, the budget picture is clearer than it was in April. We now have, as I indicated to you at that time that we now have taxable values from the property appraiser, his official June 1 numbers. Of course, we'll get another number July 1, which will be the final number. Generally speaking, there's very little variance between the June and July number, but we'll see. So again, we have those taxable values, as you know, commissioners. We've received all of the constitutional officer budget requests, and OMB has performed all of the departmental reviews and the capital project reviews, so that's all contemplated in the preliminarily balanced budget before you today. Commissioners, as reflected in the agenda materials, the property appraiser has provided a preliminary property value of 10.3%, a 10.3% increase over last year, which, commissioners, represents an increase of $6.9 million since April. And Commissioner, I'll provide greater detail on this later in the presentation. But these increased values, of course, in April correspond with, as I mentioned, all the final evaluations that we've been conducting throughout the process relative to the constitutional officer budget request, relative to our departmental budget requests, and our capital. As such, commissioners, the balanced budget before you includes funding high priority projects, including, and I'm just going to tick through a few of them here. As the chair mentioned, the implementation of the board's strategic initiatives and the provision of daily essential county services. It provides funding for constitutional and judicial officers to meet their statutory and constitutional requirements. It funds mandatory payments to the state, including that which I just mentioned and a lot more. It replaces the considerable loss, Commissioners, of ARPA replacement revenues, which we've used over the past couple of years to assist in balancing the budget. That's important. It reduces, Commissioners, our reliance on fund balance, which increases our reserves to responsibly deal with foreseeable future budget impacts and unanticipated challenges. We'll talk a little bit more about that today. And yes, Commissioners, it includes a capital budget that invests in county infrastructure and equipment to grow our resiliency and readiness to severe weather. Lastly, Commissioners, based on your direction at the April workshop, the property appraiser's official value estimate increase is available should the board wish to fund the 5% across the board pay increases, which the board again directed come back to you at this time for your consideration. However, Commissioners, I should note, after taking all of that budget balancing into consideration, the preliminary budget remains both fiscally conservative as well as highly responsible, as demonstrated by, and I'm just going to highlight a few points here. As the chair indicated, no change in the millage rate for the 13th consecutive year, no new taxes or new fees of any kind in the budget, no general revenue supported positions, new positions. We do have 6 planned EMS positions to address the increased call volumes that are paid from dedicated EMS funds. There is no use of general fund balance. These are things that might not make everybody excited, but it makes the budgeteers around the table very excited. No use of general revenue fund balance. That's for the first time since 2010. Which positions us again to grow our reserves for any future unanticipated budget impacts. We're maximizing ARPA funds, as I mentioned, and importantly, I just wanted to add that we're spending all of those ARPA revenues down, not returning a penny, and we'll have those spent by our statutory sunset. We are sustaining, again, a high level of quality service, maintaining strategic long-term investments in infrastructure, and of course, Commissioners, the budget also reflects our commitment to ensuring a high-performing workplace and fair and equitable practices across the board. As I wrap up my overview comments, Commissioners, I want to emphasize the amount of effort and scrutiny that occurs before we get to this table. I hope that you might agree that what may have been a highly complex or arduous process is presented in very clear, straightforward manner for your policy considerations. Commissioners, I want to just take a quick moment to thank all county staff and their efforts, again, getting to this point in the process, including Rashonda Bradley, our Director of Management and Budget, and the budget staff for their dedication and excellent work. I also want to thank our constitutional officers for their spirit of cooperation. Commissioners, you know this. The constitutional officers have a significant impact on the county budget. And again, their spirit of cooperation and participation in this process is something that I greatly appreciate, and I know you do as well, Commissioners. And finally, Commissioners, I want to thank you for all the policy guidance that you provided, again, to this point in the process, for your consistent leadership up to and including today in the development of the 25 budget. And thank you for your continued commitment to ensure that Leon County remains highly efficient, operationally effective, and the responsible fiscal stewards that we have been for many, many years at Leon County. And Commissioners, you are to be commended for that. With that, Commissioners, I'm going to hand it off to Rashonda, who's going to provide a little bit more detail. Again, she's going to hand it off to a couple of our team around the table in different sections. And then, Madam Chair, we'll be coming back to you to receive any questions, any direction that you have for us today. With that, let me hand it off to Rashonda.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners, and thank you, Vance. Just to underscore Vince's points, Commissioners, we continue to approach the FY25 budget process and future budgets in a very conservative manner. In our field, we operate in an environment where we anticipate the unanticipated, meaning we highly expect, as Vince said, unfunded mandates and other cost shifts from the state legislature. In this high record inflation environment, we continue to anticipate increases in our operating costs just to open the doors each year. Therefore, Commissioners, when we're preparing the budget, we're constraining any increases to the operating budgets to the smallest levels necessary to ensure we're in a position to address these impacts as they arise now and in the future. We spoke in great detail at your April workshop about the current economic and legislative conditions that are clouding our budget process. So just a quick recap. As Vince said, this is the final year that ARPA funds are available to balance the budget. The FY25 budget includes $1.9 million of those final revenue replacement dollars. We've used a portion of these funds over the past 4 fiscal years to balance our operating budget and support our capital program. These funds have been critically important to our ability to balance, and of course, these won't be available in the future. So we'll be forced to constrain our growth to normal increases in our property tax and other general revenues. As we said, the budget continues to contemplate high inflation in the cost of operating supplies, construction bids. We included an analysis in your materials related to capital projects and what's driving up those costs as well. Inflation is down from the peak of over 9%. That's what we experienced in 2022, but we're still above normal levels at 3.3% at the end of May. Of course, the Fed likes to keep inflation around that 2% level, so we're still in a high environment. At their most recent meeting last week, interest rates have remained unchanged. Therefore, the cost of borrowing is still up. And of course, when borrowing's up, purchases are down, which in turn affects our tax collections. Additionally, Commissioners, as Vince stated, we were lucky this year. We dodged the most drastic impacts from proposed legislation. Just looking at the number, that $23 million, all of our increase in our general revenues would have wiped that away. I mean, it's just a very dramatic figure. But as Vince said, we highly anticipate next spring that these issues and other issues will revisit us again. So therefore, we operate in a very, like I said, conservative manner, constraining our costs to ensure we're in a position to address these impacts going forward. With that, Commissioners, it's a good segue to some of our deliberate efforts to cut costs or avoid costs. This is a deliberate approach throughout the year, not just during the budget process. Before we come to you with any recommendations for fee increases, tax increases, or new positions, employees are doing a deep dive, coming up with creative ways to avoid costs. And this year alone, we've identified $12 million in savings, and that's over $76 million since we began really tracking this since 2013. Just switching to some of the more detailed budget information. As we reported to you in April, we were still early in the budget development process. There were still a lot of unknowns at that point. Since then, of course, we've received preliminary values from the Property Appraiser's Office, and we're anticipating an additional $6.9 million from April. I'll quickly touch on some of these increases. I know we've had information in our briefings and it's all in your materials. But on May 1st, of course, we received final constitutional officer budgets, which came in a little over what we had anticipated in April. The budget contemplates continued funding for 2 host deputies for LCSO. Of course, Commissioners, if you recall, these positions were funded through ARPA funds. ARPA funds supported these positions in 22, 23, and 24. So the sheriff has requested that we continue funding for these positions through general revenue. Also, Commissioners, that includes an additional patrol deputy position for the sheriff for the western area of the county and the national forest areas. That position was previously funded through some funds from the Forestry Services, so that's also included in the sheriff's budget. As Vince said, hot off the press, a week and a half ago, we received word from the state that our statutorily required Medicaid payment was increasing by an additional almost $500,000. Since April, we also had meetings with our judiciary, PD, state attorney, and the court system, and they had some additional requests for some upgrades in courtrooms, which is also tied to our Article 5 requirements to provide technology for the judiciary. And as Vince stated, and we'll get into additional detail later, we're able, with this increase in revenue, to dedicate an additional $3.6 million in recurring general revenue for our capital program to address some of these storm readiness projects. And that's a big deal, Commissioner. Anytime, as Vince said, we can not budget fund balance and have recurring revenues to fund these critical projects, it's allowing us to maintain our reserves, restore our reserves. So that's a big deal for the budgeteers, as Vince called us. And in addition, Commissioners, as Vince stated, the increase in revenue does provide the additional funding for 5% raises if the board chooses, and that option is provided for you as well. Transitioning, Commissioners, to the overall budget. On your screen, you'll see a summary of anticipated revenues and expense changes from our FY24 budget. I'm just going to hit some of the high points. Of course, all the detail is in your materials, and we can answer any questions that you may have. But as we stated, property tax revenues are anticipated to increase by about $18 million. That's a 10.3% increase in values compared to last year's 7.87%. Other general revenues, Commissioners, such as your sales tax and state shared revenues, are anticipated to increase, with some declines in other areas, such as your gas taxes. Other increases to note, you'll see here your EMS fees and Medicaid reimbursements from the state. They're seeing an increase, and this increase is pretty much tied to our increase in call volumes and also the increase in the EMS MSTU. These increases, Commissioners, as Vince said, is positioning us to hire 6 new EMS positions, replace ambulances and some of EMS's other critical equipment, such as cardiac monitors. Switching to the expenditures, Commissioners, as shown on your screen, the majority of these increases are tied to our essential services, just normal operating expenditures, and as some of our mandatory payments. The sheriff's budget, of course, includes the final year of the officer's step plan, and also bringing deputy position salaries up to that $60,000 minimum. Capital program, we have a estimated capital budget of $28 million. This is an increase of $4 million from your 24 budget. And we'll go into a little more detail later in the presentation on some of your capital projects. Inflationary increases related to your contracts, utilities, and fuel, estimated to increase by a little over $3 million. And our overall Leon County government personnel budget, which includes, of course, our healthcare costs, our mandatory retirement costs, and a 0 to 3% average, 0 to 5% with a 3% average performance raises. And lastly, Commissioners, as we've stated, the budget continues to fund your other constitutional officers, and we're also realizing some savings in the SOE's budget this year, which fluctuates depending on the election cycle. Again, Commissioners, the complete details are in your budget on all of these increases, and we can go into any more detail if you like. Switching to the capital budget, Commissioners, as I said, your FY25 capital program budget is $28 million. As Vince would say, there isn't anything too sexy about the capital program, but we are continuing to provide funding to maintain our safe and functioning infrastructure. We're just going to hit just a few high points on the capital budget. The entire recommended capital budget is included in your attachments. As we've discussed, Commissioners, after each significant rain event, we take a deep dive to reflect on opportunities to enhance our disaster response and resiliency to future storm events. Brent is going to go into a little bit more detail on that $3.6 million in projects that we've identified to help us do that.
Thank you, Rashonda. To reiterate, this $3.6 million in proposed funding is essential for the county to maintain its resiliency and readiness for upcoming storms as the new storm season has officially arrived. We've already seen the impact of how maintaining our readiness is We've already seen the impact of how important maintaining our readiness is with the bicentennial storm and the tornadoes. From the Highway 20 area out west to Patrick Pond and low-lying areas in the east, Public Works has responded to flooding, repaired washed-out roads, cleared culverts, and pumped out saturated areas to increase our readiness and ensure emergency services have access to neighborhoods. This budget proposal expands this focused investment, and I'll highlight just a couple items. First, we have 3 stormwater infrastructure projects with investments totaling $1.4 million that will repair, replace aging infrastructure, and ensure public safety. These projects are the West Joe Thomas Road project at Harvey Creek, moving eastward, the Sandstone Ranch subdivision project, and in the Lake Jackson area, we have the Viewpoint Pond project. These projects have been identified as the most at-need storm readiness projects for Public Works, and we are happy to get started. Second, we have heavy-duty vehicle and equipment replacement totaling $1.4 million. Bottom line, we know that we have highly trained staff to answer the call for any disaster. However, we also need equipment that works when we turn the key in those times. During the bicentennial storm alone, our department repaired 11 private roads requiring 79 truckloads of gravel and other materials, work that started just hours after the storm passed. We repaired a significant washout on Sir Richard Road within 9 hours, utilizing 36 loads of gravel and installing a 40-foot culvert to rebuild the roadway and allow first responders in. This capital project keeps our heavy equipment inventory up to date and ready to deploy. This investment for 3 new dump trucks, a chipper, a loader, and a backhoe will enable Leon County to immediately address emergency road clearing and debris removal efforts following whatever disaster may come. Thank you. Rashonda?
Thanks, Brent. Commissioners, just some quick highlights on some of your other projects included in this year's CIP. Of course, Vince, you don't maintain roads, Brent maintains roads. We maintain over hundreds of miles of roads each year. Excuse me. The budget includes $5.5 million in dedicated blueprint sales tax for resurfacing. We maintain over 2 million square feet of facilities. In that, of course, is our detention center, over $5 million to address some of the critical needs at the jail. I've already touched briefly on increases for our EMS equipment. Also, Commissioner, the budget includes over $2 million for sidewalk construction, $1.8 million for our building county facilities, general maintenance and repairs. For our parks and greenways, we have over $1 million in the budget for maintaining over 1,000 acres of parks and trails that our parks facilities employees maintain each year. And lastly, Commissioner, another project we also highlight later in the presentation is our Essential Libraries Initiative, and $1 million is included in the budget to continue those capital updates at the main library. An additional aspect of the budget we wanted to touch on, Commissioners, is our fund balance. Fund balance is the government accounting term to describe our savings account or our reserves. These balances are accumulated for a number of reasons. The first one is cash flow. Having these reserves on hand at the beginning of the fiscal year allows us to pay our bills before property tax collections begin to be collected in November. If we didn't have these reserves on hand, we would have to borrow just to pay our bills in the initial part of the fiscal year. Also, Commissioners, these balances provide the necessary funding for emergencies in our CAT fund, which we'll touch on in just a second. And also, fund balances are accumulated to pay for capital projects, as we've done in the past through our capital fund sweeps. However, Commissioners, generally, as a best practice, we tell you all the time we don't recommend using our fund balance to fund recurring operating expenditures. However, budgeting a small amount here and there isn't unreasonable, as our fund balances do grow each year with the over collection of revenues or under expenditure of budgeted expenditures. So on the screen, Commissioners, what you'll see here, since 2010, as Vince stated, we haven't used any fund balance. This is the first year since then that the budget includes no fund balance to balance the budget. And what that says, what that does is allow us to maintain our reserves, restore our reserves for future storm events or other emergencies or downturns in the economy that we've experienced. Switching to your CAT fund, Commissioners, at your June 11th meeting, you requested an update on current expenditures charged to the CAT fund. Of course, this fund was created by the board in 2008 after Tropical Storm Faye. It's established at 2% of your general operating expenditures, and the purpose of this fund was to support and pay for county-related storm events caused after a natural disaster. And these storm costs, Commissioners, are paid up front by the county prior to seeking any federal reimbursements. So we have to have sufficient cash flow on hand to meet those obligations prior to going through what can be a long, lengthy process with FEMA. My notes did say that we haven't received the federal declaration yet, but as Vince stated, we have received word that we've received the federal declaration for the May 10th tornadoes. Just a quick recap, Commissioners, of what this fund has been used for to date. If you recall, last fall we had some debris costs related to Hurricane Idalia, a little over $500,000. And we've also dedicated $1 million to the Team Leon micro grant program for these past tornado events. Future expenditures, Commissioners, that we're anticipating. Of course, we had some structures damaged during the tornado event. We filed all the necessary paperwork with our insurance providers. Originally, we anticipated a $75,000 deductible per structure. We had 4 structures damaged, but working with our risk management team, our facilities team, we've gotten our insurance agents that information, and they have categorized this event as a catastrophic event. So we're only going to have to pay one $75,000 deductible, which is going to cover all of our buildings. So that's going to save us a little over $200,000. Our debris costs for the tornadoes is estimated right now at about $7 million. Brent and his team, they're working with the debris contractors right now to fine-tune that estimate. And at your July 9th meeting, we'll be bringing back an additional item and a budget amendment to true up our reserve funds, our CAT funds, so we can pay these costs. As I said, Commissioners, right now the fund was established at $4 million, so we'll have to replenish that funds in order to meet those costs, and that information will be brought back to you at your July 9th meeting. All right, switching to strategic initiatives. While, as we said, the budget is conservative, Commissioners, there's still funding in the budget to support and enhance several of your strategic initiatives. At this point, we're going to touch on a couple of them in this presentation. Shinkton's going to be up first to talk about our emergency shelters.
And again, Commissioners, before you go there, Shinkton, just a quick reminder on this section, you do have options in your item that speak to these. Again, this falls in that category I mentioned earlier about tying up some loose ends. Washington's going to talk about the money that you've already have appropriated in the budget, but there was a placeholder to come back to the board on the specifics related to the establishment of line items for our shelter operations. So Washington's going to talk about that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. County Administrator. Thank you, Rashonda. So in addition to your strategic initiative, as County Administrator mentioned, Commissioners, as you may recall, in your budget process, you set aside one-time ARPA dollars for line item funding for the emergency homeless shelters in order to expand their resources, enhance their service delivery, and strengthen their operations to reduce homelessness in the community. What's on the slide and in more detail in your workshop packet is the specific allocation each shelter would receive as recommended in coordination and collaboration with the city and the Children's Services Council, or CSC. In total, $1.5 million will be invested in the shelters annually between the county, city, and CSC. Line item funding provides the shelters budget certainty for shelter operations such as providing beds, meals, and showers, as well as case management services, which is critical to connecting clients to permanent housing. The recommended line item amount establishes a baseline of investment that ensures that the shelters receive level funding that they have historically received through CHSP based on a 5-year average of funding, while also providing funding based on bed capacity at each shelter that will allow for enhanced service delivery that ultimately reduces homelessness in our community, which is primary goal. With line item funding will come also greater oversight in partnership and in coordination with the Big Bend Continuum of Care as the lead, and include the county, the city, CSC, UPHS, as well as the heads of each shelter that will include performance metrics focused on transitioning clients from the shelters to permanent housing, evaluating and updating policies and procedures such as who and who are not eligible to stay at the shelters, hours of operations, length of stay, and actively, as part of the oversight, working with the COC and UPHS to regularly enhance the financial sustainability of the shelters and leverage the local dollars that's being invested into the shelters to secure additional federal and state grant opportunities. The performance metrics, policies, and procedures will align with best practices for shelter operations developed by HUD, as well as the National Alliance to End Homelessness. With that, Commissioners, as you can see on the slide, we are recommending, and the budget contemplates, the county line item allocation for each shelter that you see up here on the screen that is highlighted in yellow to the furthest left, where it says county funding, for your approval. And with that, I will turn it back to Rashonda.
All right, Commissioners,
Commissioners, just wanted to give a quick introduction here. And again, we're going to be wrapping up very soon. We'll turn it back to the board for all of your questions and direction. But Commissioners, wanted just to take a moment to highlight, we know how this process can be sometimes with all of the numbers, and we put such an emphasis on, the maintenance and of, safe and functional infrastructure and that sort of thing. And it seems like sometimes we don't get to talk to you about anything exciting. We still do exciting stuff occasionally, and we still do really innovative and transformational things. And included in this budget, Commissioners, is annual funding for an effort that's been underway a couple of years. And we just wanted to take an opportunity. It's been a little while since the board has seen this, but we thought as a backdrop to all of the culverts and the drainage and the streets that you hear about, that you get to hear something, again, that's exciting and transformational that's happening, which this budget, again, is reflected in this year's budget. And I wanted to give Pamela Monroe the opportunity just to give you a quick update on our ELI initiative at the library. So, Pamela?
Thank you very much. So the main library was built in 1991, and a few upgrades have been made to that building. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. However, libraries across the nation are being tasked with adapting our services and resources to meet the challenges of the community. This capital improvement project is a result of targeted community listening sessions and surveys as presented in the May 25th, 2021 budget workshop where the Essential Libraries Initiative was adopted. I am very happy to say that my first day working, I walked into this project. So it's really exciting. Architects Lewis and Whitlock, they took the time to listen to our needs, and they really just inserted the essence of the ELI into this plan. And our project manager, Stephen Kelly, has also listened to, what our library is doing now. So you're going to be excited about what you see. To date, the board has allocated a total of $1.9 million in funding to support library upgrades. At the January 2024 meeting, the board also realized a $400,000 public library construction grant from the state for a total investment to date of $2.3 million. Another $2.5 million is planned over the next 3 fiscal years to support the next phase of this project. So this is phase 1. With the assistance of CMR, signage will be updated to fit the ELI focus areas. This is timeless signage, and it will be featured throughout our entire library system. This is our current, that went too fast. Sorry. Took the wow factor away. This is the current entrance of our Park Avenue, and this is where we're headed. So it's a more inviting entrance that features our media collection as well as casual seating, which the surveys conducted so that is what people were looking for. They wanted to have an experience in the library, and that's what we want to present. Gone is the gigantic reference desk, and we will be featuring 3 mobile desks within the second floor, which will allow for patrons to have staff at every corner. This is a bird's eye view of the space with the West Wing featuring our collection, which is our print materials, all the library, and the East Wing featuring more library services and meeting room spaces. So corner to corner, all aspects will be refreshed. So the Leon County Public Library has a very strong history of supporting adult literacy. One of the things that we're going to be doing is relocating our adult education programs from the 3rd floor down to the 2nd floor, which will increase the visibility of programs and services such as our GED assistance, adult tutoring, and citizenship classes. And I was told yesterday that we have over 230 adult learners that come through our library system. So that's dynamic. In addition, there will also be some computer workstations in that room to accommodate digital learning and create a better sense of being in this learning commons. We will also have a community resources center, which will be available for patrons who are seeking assistance in social and human services, such as government services and food and SNAP programs. Our community resources specialist, which is a position that was a part of the Essential Libraries Initiative, this is where she does a lot of her work, where she helps everyday citizens who need assistance with applying for all types of things. So we will be expanding that. This is currently the East Wing, and wait for it. And this is where we're headed. I'm really excited about this because our new career corner is this comprehensive resource center that's going to be in the library. Oh, my fingers are moving too fast. In the library that will support patrons with their career and workforce goals, such as employment guidance and career service training. And the thing is that we are going to be taking our staff from the 1st floor and actually putting them throughout the library system. So people will be there whenever someone needs them. And we feel like that's the most important thing. Going down the East Wing, more fun things. We're going to have a sound booth, which will offer patrons a place to do audio recording for things such as podcasting and sound mixing, but also huddle rooms You see the light that's coming through there? You don't see that right now. These huddle rooms are small conference areas and meeting spaces for collaboration. And on the other side of that huddle room, after working with OEV and Public Works, we're going to have a heavy equipment simulator lab that focuses on jobs that are using construction equipment and the training that goes along with that. This is the opposite side of that. This plan layout will include 4 rooms with a range of uses from board meetings to book clubs with sizes suitable to groups up to 40. It's going to allow for various library programs to be done in those rooms as well. And we are really looking at making our entire library system multi-purpose. We will also be adding some independent study rooms since we're seeing more remote work and remote learning. People sometimes just want to change up the scenery. They come to the library. We will have 6 rooms for 1 to 2 patrons for virtual meetings and interviews, as well as some additional larger rooms that are 3-person rooms. So this revamped design aims to offer adaptable meeting spaces that accommodate a diverse range of needs, such as community events and collaborative sessions. We're really into this flexible layout. We want to be able to switch this up whenever people need it switched. Mobile shelving, which we really got excited about, and furniture is going to give us the ability to change this area from full reading retreat to, hey, library lecture hall. So people always ask, what about the books? We are not changing anything about our books. We are really excited to say that our collection size is actually increasing. It's not going to decrease because of this renovation. In fact, we're taking our shelving from 8-9-foot shelving down to about 6 foot. So we'll be able to better display the books that we have. We're going to have a dedicated ancestry alcove that will provide patrons with more easily accessible genealogy collection, and in-person computers are going to be spread throughout the library as opposed to the institutional in a row. And that's our phase 1. Here's a phase 2 preview, which is the first floor. We're going to include a library of things, showroom, a maker space, and a cafe space. And we're kind of excited about this because this cafe space is going to be a dedicated working and eating space with a coffee shop vibe that will also include a food pantry. And in support of our arts and humanities, we're going to have a maker space so that we can have things such as crafternoons, other arts and hands-on activities. And our Library of Things storefront is planned. It has grown to over 100 non-traditional things. So we're going to create a storefront for it for, paddleboards, outdoor games, book clubs. So by this time next year, commissioners, we hope to be enjoying our second floor space, and I appreciate all the work that the team has done to listen to what our needs are. Back to you, Rashawn.
Thanks, Pamela. Commissioners, as we wrap up, wanted to share 2 of Vince's favorite slides, which allows us to kind of toot our own horn a little bit as we show how we compare and benchmarks against other life-size counties around Florida. Commissioners, when it comes to our budget, we have the lowest net budget and the lowest budget per county resident among all of our like-sized counties. On top of that, we continue to have one of the highest bond ratings available, just further demonstrating how efficient we are in providing all the essential services our community expects year after year, but doing it with very limited resources. Commissioners, just on your screen are the next steps following today's workshop. July 1st, we will receive final numbers from the property appraiser's office. We're not anticipating any significant changes, but we'll bring any changes back to you during our budget workshop ratification at your July 9th meeting. And of course, Commissioners, you'll formally adopt your budgets at your September public hearings. With that, the options are before you, and we will turn it over.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Commissioners, we'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair. Happy to answer any questions that the board has on anything you've heard today and anything else with that. Commissioners, we appreciate it. And Madam Chair, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. County Administrator. We certainly want to thank you and Ms. Bradley and the other staff for the great presentations that you all have afforded us this morning. We certainly appreciate all the printed material that we have gotten and have had a chance to review and analyze as well. Commissioners, you've heard the presentations, you've had your briefings, you reviewed the documentation, and before we get to staff recommendations and options that are in our material on pages 5 and 35, I want to give you the opportunity to direct any questions to the county administrator and staff. I have in queue Commissioner O'Keefe and then Commissioner Minor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Rashonda. Thank you, Vince, and everybody. I'm excited about the library. Looks very neat, and maybe we even give up my commission office so I can just go work over there with you. I'm sure all the staff would love it. I just have a few questions. We focused a lot on and continue to fund and replace ARPA funds on emergency housing, homeless shelters and things like that. And so what I want to know is, what do we do, and do we have an amount of money or a certain policy that we do to expand permanent supportive housing? And I ask that because at the Kearney Center, what I've heard from my meetings there is they have people ready to go to get out of beds there to go into housing, but there's not capacity for regular affordable housing. And research shows and HUD grants are all focused towards permanent supportive housing. So can you talk about what we're doing and what we're financially committing to that effort in Leon County?
Sure. I'm going to let Shinkton take the lead on that one.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Mr. Administrator. Yeah, so permanent supportive housing is a combination of two things, right? It's vouchers to pay for the individual's rent as well as case management. And those are, as you mentioned, Commissioners, paid primarily through the federal government, and something that in our community, we have just over 400 units of PSH here in our community. It's the continuum of care who has taken the lead and continues to take the lead to work to get more PSH here in our community. They build that as part of their annual funding requests at the federal level, because those are dollars that are required in order for us to be able to provide PSH here in our community.
Excellent. Thank you. The other... Really, that's the only questions. The rest are really compliments and things I want to point out. So, sorry, Shinkton, you got the question. Everyone else is going to get compliments. So I just want to highlight a few things. I really appreciate you bringing proactively the $3.6 million of additional expected revenue to be used for improving storm readiness and resilience. That's something that is a good question that we heard from a lot of our neighbors who are significantly impacted in different areas about flooding. Some still are. We're still pumping Pedrick Road. The Miccosukee Greenway is still underwater. And so folks are reasonably asking, why didn't we build for this? And as your materials have said, and I heard in the briefing, is we're going to continue to see more extreme storm events. And this is an effort to improve where we see we need improvement, and perhaps build up, for lack of the technical term, a better tolerance and a better limit of what we can handle in some of those areas. So I really appreciate that. It's a worthwhile investment. And the other is, you didn't mention it, and I'm sure it was just for time and brevity, but you mentioned here that our staff they're coming up with ways to do cost avoidance and cost savings that are really underpinning in the least sexy way to non-accountants, keeping our millage rate from going up and keeping us able to be effective in our mission to serve our county and to be able to address new initiatives even as costs increase for everything. So the current fiscal year, 12.2 million, is that right, has been by the actions and creative thinking of our team cost avoided. And a big one, I'd love to hear if you can name a department or credit for the $11.3 million savings that we're going to have from, instead of building new office space for the sheriff's office that's needed, finding an appropriate lease to save $11.3 million over the life of that. Who gets credit for that, Vince?
Our real estate department, essentially, and our Office of Management budget together.
All right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Again, great work. I'm glad I don't have to prepare this budget for us, and I just appreciate the excellent strategic thinking, forward thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Keefe. Commissioner Minor, and then Commissioner Proctor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just to reiterate what Commissioner O'Keefe said, I just want a huge thank you to all of our staff, our budget staff, Rashonda, but everybody else in all the departments that, as you say, work all year long for this effort today. So very appreciative of that. 13 years in a row, no millage rate increase. That's commendable. It really is. It shows a lot of financial discipline. And then, as Commissioner O'Keefe said also, I think the increase in the capital budget for resilience efforts is going to be key. During the briefing, Vince and I talked about, just with the change in the climate and the more extreme weather that we're having. Nationwide, there are infrastructure systems that are just not built to have a 100-year flood every 5 years. And Leon County is no different. But I think we've been very smart over the years in maintaining our infrastructure prudently, and I think this resilience investment here is going to help us for the future. Also want to thank the Sheriff's Office for their work on the host deputies. And I know we knew going in that using ARPA funds to fund those host deputies was not going to last forever. But I really appreciate the staff at the Sheriff's Office and our county administrators team for making sure that we keep those host deputies working. I think most of us have been out there walking with them while they're walking throughout the community, and they know a lot of these folks that are out on the street by their first names. And the hard part, the hard work, is forming those relationships one at a time, building that trust with someone that's on the street that has no trust whatsoever with the system, but yet trying to encourage that person to engage with the Kearney Center or other resources that we have to try to get them the help that they need. That's hard work. One-on-one it takes, and those host deputies are doing a good job of it. So very happy to see our continuation of funding for that. I had a couple questions about the library and the library campaign that we've been having, which is great, and the images that you showed were terrific. But Ms. Monroe, you said that our collection has increased as opposed to decreased. But are you talking about our physical inventory, our physical collection, or both physical and digital?
Both our physical and digital collection have increased. Our physical collection has increased by nearly 20,000 books in the past 4 years.
That's great.
And our digital collection, because we've added Hoopla, has increased to, we have 1.3 million books in our digital collection because Hoopla gives us so much.
That's great. Leon County has a large group of people who just love our libraries, and they spend a tremendous amount of time in the libraries. And some of them, I'm sure we've all heard this, just like going through the stacks and liking to see the books. And so the images you have here are terrific, and I'm glad we're going in that direction. But I know we're going to get questions. If the physical collection is increasing, where are all the books? Where are they being held? And I did step out for a second, so if you said that in the beginning, I apologize if you already mentioned it. But we're going to get the questions. Mm-hmm. Where are you shifting the storage of that physical collection from the areas that you just showed pictures of?
Absolutely. So the fiction collection, which is on the second floor, the adult fiction collection, does not change at all. We're just taking our shelving from being this tall to about my height. And the nonfiction section, which is currently in the east wing, will be shifting to right now where we have our computers.
Okay.
And we will be spreading also parts of that out throughout the library on the second floor. So we're just going with lower shelving. We've been preparing for this for about 5 or 6 years now with, making sure that we eliminate books that are on the bottom row and books that are on the top row. So really, we've got the same amount of shelves that are going in. We are actually prepared to be able to have more books. We're just changing our shelves from being so high from your
That's great.
institutional academic.
That's a great answer. And 'cause I know we're going to get those questions, right? And so, us being able to assure people that the collection is still there, it's still retained. It's just the formatting of the display and the shelving is different, but that the collection is still there. So, and I know, obviously, we're all living in the digital age. I understand how that works, and there are tremendous benefits for that. But also, we've got a lot of folks, a lot of readers in Leon County that want to have the physical books as well. So it's great to see that we're accommodating both of those demographics. Thanks very much. Really appreciate it. Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ronnie. Commissioner Proctor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, staff. We appreciate your great work. I wanted to ask a question. I was looking at the street lighting under attachment 13 down there on page 360. And I still can't find, and I'm trying to ask y'all point blank, how come you all don't like Crawfordville Road? Why you don't like the people on Crawfordville Road? How come you don't like the people who come up and down in year after year? I have virtually begged you to be carried. We're not on this list. I've been asking for lights forever. What am I supposed to do, Mr. Administrator, to get some lights? And then your policy indicates that if you're not on this right here, or you're not on the unsignalized intersections list, we ain't gonna go nowhere. So we need to go somewhere. What do we need to do in this budget right now? Crawfordville Road can get some lights.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Please.
Commissioner Proctor. Yeah, I think we've answered that question in the past. I think, Brent, let me defer to you and get your response.
Yes, Commissioner, that's a state road, and that project has been funded. And we're just waiting for the City of Tallahassee, which implements the street lighting on behalf of DOT, to get installed.
Now, what you all told us is that if we're not on this particular list under the criteria statement, that only the projects on the street lighting project list or the school bus stops lighting list will be approved for installation and subject to the annual appropriation by board. That's not what the word's saying, and what the list is not carrying or not reconciled. I don't see Crawford Road. I want some lights. I'm so sick and tired of saying this over and over. I'm almost 79 years old. And for the criteria that you use for road, let's see, this criteria is the nighttime crash rate to the presence of pedestrian crosswalk and sidewalk. I think we can check that. I don't know how many crashes at night. Vehicular traffic volume. Everybody's going to walk color down this road. The number of vehicular travel lanes, you got at least 4. The sight distance, the road geometry, all the rest of it you see down here, pedestrian volume. I don't understand how all these streets don't. Crawfordville Road is barely in third or second place to any of these other streets. And it look like favoritism. It look like you all just don't like this road. And maybe you just don't like me asking you for this road to have some lights on it.
Can we clarify, Madam Chair? I'm not sure.
Yes.
Commissioner Proctor heard our response.
Can we hear clarification? Yeah. And can he speak closer to
Yes.
his mic? I didn't really understand. Yeah.
I'm sorry about that. So that is a FDOT road, and the FDOT does have a project for street lighting. The Department of Transportation utilizes the City of Tallahassee to install the street lights. So there is a project out there. It just has not been implemented yet.
So, okay, for clarification, are you saying it's a state road and the state is responsible? The state is responsible
that is
for any
correct.
lights on the road and not the county? Is that,
That is correct.
okay.
On point, Madam Chair?
It is funded, and it is in the process of being implemented.
Right, but see
It's
what,
state funded as well? Okay.
so we got three policies. Our policy says that roads in the unincorporated area, but it don't say when it's a state road that covers unincorporated area, it preempts. I don't see that. It says when we are in an unincorporated area that the county's responsible to do those lights. So in the absence of seeing a parallel as well as a preemptive policy of the state to cover, I go by what I read. And I don't see us on the list, and I've been asking forever.
Mr. County Administrator Manager, and I believe you had a comment too, Commissioner Maddox.
I'm looking at Commissioner Minor and O'Keefe. Crawfordville Road is one of the roads we talked about, CRTPA, correct? I think it's number number two, right. And I would imagine that those improvements, including lighting and widening and all that kind of stuff, be included in the design and everything of that road. I was wondering for that. Yeah, so I would, Commissioner Proctor, I understand exactly where you're coming from with your desire to get that, but I don't think we can blame these good people here for it not happening yet. It's working its way up up through CRTPA, and it's right now currently sitting at priority number 2. And in those things, along with other road design things, it will be the lighting and other stuff like that. But once it gets there, the state and the funds that will go towards building that road and getting those lights will be there. So we have the members of the CRTPA have worked very hard to try to make sure that we've got prioritization of the projects that we would like to see done here in Leon County. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, and my colleagues here can back me up on that, I think the first 3 projects are all within Leon County and on the south side, correct?
Yes, please, you can address it.
Mr. Maddox, thank you very much for bringing that up. And Mr. Proctor, I think you had the list of CRTPA at our last county commission meeting. You thanked the CRTPA.
Yeah, well, you all on the wrong, y'all not even listening to me.
Well,
I am
Madam
talking
Chair.
about lights, not road. I'm talking about light bulbs over a street that's inside of Capitol Circle. from
Again,
Wilson
within those
Green.
improvements of the road on the CRTPA includes lights, includes the
That's
road design.
5 miles
everything
down the
else.
street. What you're talking about is from 363, expanding it to Wakulla Line. I get that. That's at least 2 miles down the road.
Commissioner Proctor, what does that have to do with the fact that these folks just told us that the state and the city are in charge of putting lights on those roads, not the county?
No, what they just told us is that our policy for our putting lights in unincorporated areas, we put them up except for when it's a state road. But that designation is not there. We do have a Crawfordville Road mentioning on this list, Crawfordville Road at Shelfer, to be signalized as an intersection. I guess the state did that. But to the people who are state citizens, to the people who are county citizens, their expectations about lights and seeing and safety, they may not distinguish, oh, I'm riding on a state road. It's dark out here. Or I'm riding on a county road. The state of Florida exists and has presence inside of Leon County as it has in no other county. Now, one of us governments, because we suffer and in some ways are enlarged and enhanced from the state's presence, we need some light. And I'm not talking about, and we are appreciative that you all have brought Woodville Highway up as it well should have been for a long time before now. As Crawfordville Road, long before it became online, it should have, it warranted, it needed it. It's been the #1 priority forever. So I appreciate, what you're saying, that's good. But it deserves, it merits where it's placed. Now, these lights from Wilson Green up to Capitol Circle are missing, and that road have been widened for, I'm gonna guesstimate, Vince, 15, 18 years. the rest of the lights never came with it. Put up the Christmas tree and ain't got no lights on it. This road been wide. It's an urban area. The city gerrymanders the area that black people can't vote in city elections there. It stops right at Wilson Green. Everything there is contiguous with people, the density, they have no sewer, ain't got no lights. I mean, we're talking about, how many millions we talking about here? Rashonda just told us about a whole bunch of money. I just want some lights. I mean, if I'm over asking, then somebody say I'm over asking, but Brett just told us that the state of Florida got it coming, so we'll live on in this darkness. That was my first question. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Pratt, before we move on, let me just ask, Mr. County Administrator, do we have a projection about when that construction from the state standpoint will begin?
Ben, you've got that? I know, again, we've provided this all in your materials. We've got the dates. What's the page number?
We do. It's page 354 of 453, Commissioners. There's a paragraph. Thank you, Commissioner Proctor. On this very same project, on this same segment, the last sentence at the bottom of that page, as a result, this project is anticipated for installation in fiscal year 25.
I see it.
So next year, thank you.
Okay.
And that would include lighting as well.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pendergrass.
We appreciate making the last sentence at the bottom of that page of 354. Thank you. I did not see that. Thank you. It's not listed in bold with these projects, but thank you. My additional questions, Commissioners, Madam Chair, that I have includes the 5%, is that captured 5% across the board for county employees? Where is that? Is it in the recommendation?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Please.
The preliminary budget currently identifies that amount of funding. Commissioner, you said that, and we followed your direction at the previous meeting. Commissioner Proctor, I think you were the maker of the motion. The board supported that if the values increased, that you wanted to see that recommendation brought back to you to fund that across the board. That's $1.3 million, and it is reflected in the options before you for your direction to include it in the budget.
I'm just curious. I think I saw somewhere in the pages 300 and something, somewhere out there, that last year a 5% COLA was 500 and some thousand. Rashonda, did I see that, and why is 5% last year 500 and some thousand, but this year is 1.3 million? Help me out.
No, Commissioners, the cost was actually about $1.2 million when we came to you in your June workshop. So at your June workshop last year, we were contemplating using about 1.2 in fund balance. When the July 1st values came in, they were a little more, so we were able to reduce that fund balance.
You're accurate. That's right, fund balance. But this year, we're not talking about the fund balance, so it's a straight 1 point. There's no subsidy.
You got it.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair, there was a slide that was put up with the housing. Can we go back to that one, please, the housing slide? And Madam Chair, I know that you might be even to explain that one. It was yellow or gold. I just want some lights, that's all. Okay, thank you. You know, I'm pondering, when I look at the CSC's contribution, why is the CSC nearly giving 2-to-1 versus the county and the city, and the CSC is doubling, tripling the county and the city's support of HOPE, CCYS, and Breon. What is the policy distinction that requires the CSC to roll their sleeves up and to give twice the amount of blood as the city and the county is contributing?
So the dollars are based on a formula that was developed in coordination with the city and the CSC. And so what you see up there, commissioners, is it's a combination of looking at those CHSP averages that we have on the furthest right column, but then when you do the calculations for the bed capacity with the remainder of the dollars, and then we accumulate those numbers, and then we add the calculations for the fact that the county and city solely are the ones that are covering Kearney Center, is why the dollars for the CSC Leon is higher for the shelters, the family and youth shelters.
So I know it was something technical on why they did not fund and participate in Kearney Center, but they are giving a huge effort beyond the city and the county and those other blocks of support. What is the reason that they are not giving to the Kearney Center? And are you saying that the money amount is equal and even, Stephen?
It is, because they're not giving to the Kearney Center because the Kearney Center does not house family and children.
So if they were to give to the Kearney Center, we would be adding $356,000 to their total?
No, we would have done the formula based on the dollars that they've committed in discussions with the CSC's executive director.
But you're sure that we're not exploiting, or we're not equitably funding across the board all three of these entities in your formulation of your formula?
Yes, this was a very fair formula developed with the city and CSC, and looking at the data, which would make it the best in ensuring a couple of things.
So
ensuring that we didn't do harm to our shelters, while at the same time focusing on the fact that we want to make sure that we're enhancing delivery of services in the area of shelter operations and case management, because those are the key areas, and in order for us to ensure that we're helping people transition from shelter to permanent housing.
I think it's critical and important to point out to the public, to our commission, that the CSC is like the little engine that could, is new, it's just brand new, shiny, but that they are shoulder to shoulder in the fight against or for emergency homeless shelters. And I have tall and high respect that they are not whimpering or in any way seeking to escape bearing responsibility in providing emergency homeless shelters. If they were not in existence, I'm not sure if we would be splitting an additional $425,000 between the city and county. But clearly this slide, to me, points out the Herculean work of CSC and what, Madam Chair, you all are doing over there on your board.
Commissioner Proctor, let me just interject. As this board's representative on the Children's Services Council, I think we have a statutory mandate, and we certainly support entities that provide services to children and families. As Mr. Lammy indicated, the Kearney Center does not accept children or families with children. And so because of that exclusion, the Children's Services Council cannot provide funding to the Kearney Center. I promise you, if there was a way statutorily that it could be done, we would do so. But because of the statute, services there is exclusionary. However, you see the other categories, the other nonprofit entities, governmental entities that do provide services for our children, for our families. The Children's Services Council is very, very supportive. And of course, those are just some areas that the CSC supports. There are other nonprofits that are not on that list that the Children's Services Council directly contracts with.
Well, I'm excited, and I'm really, I was like shocked at the level of support that they have stepped up to. Madam Chair, I know that I have other questions, and I'll treat this as a first round and let other commissioners, and if you allow us to come back, I can ask my balance of questions. And just to give tee up staff, I went to a conference recently, and they talked about AI and the cost of AI programs. And I was curious, and we can get to that on my next round, of where we and how we budget for AI. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would like to come back in a
I will come back to you, Commissioner Proctor. Commissioner Welch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, staff, for preparing all this documentation information. I have some questions for our budget staff. So we had another round of increases in projected revenue from the property appraiser's office recently. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that was to the tune of, was it 6.9?
6.9 million.
So $7 million. We're looking at, what's the total revenue increase from millage? Dollar amount, 28 million?
From just property taxes, it's
Yes.
18 million.
18 million.
18.7.
And what is that as a percentage of what is it, a 5% increase in property taxes, 10% increase in property taxes? What is?
It's a 10.3% increase from 24.
So we are experiencing a 10% increase in property values, which is reflecting an $18 million increase in revenues, right?
Yes.
This is concerning. Am I the only one who is concerned about this? I mean, it's concerning, frankly. When you look at the environment that we're living in, I get it. You guys got to operate a government. You do a dang good job of operating a government. We have costs. Our number one job is to provide services to our community, to run a government. But this is not our money. This money belongs to taxpayers. A 10% increase in values that's going to be passed on to taxpayers. And we do a great job of allocating it. I get that this is complicated, but it's concerning. Now, we talked in January about rate rollbacks. We flirted with this idea that the very, the sacrificial lamb of rate rollbacks, considering that. But when we look at this budget and we look at how that 6.9 million has been reallocated very quickly, it concerns me. Ms. Bradley, what was the cost of the 5% across the board pay increase last year? You said 1.2?
Yes, it was.
What was it the year before that? Do you know off the top of your head? About 1.2?
Probably about $1 million.
So we're at $2.2 million in annual recurring costs for pay. That's a 10% pay increase to the counties and the constitutional officers' workforces, 10% over the last 2 years. And now we're contemplating another 5% in this budget, which would take us to an almost $4 million annual recurring revenue increase that we will have been committed to. Yet we are not talking about the 10% property value increase. Do we know what the percentage of property value increase was last year for revenue?
Last year it was 7.87%.
And what about the year before that?
9.3%.
So we've had a almost 30% increase in property valuations over the last 3 years, which means people are paying 30% more for their property taxes over the last 3 years. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Guys, that's a big eek for me, given the nature of all the other things that we've dealt with. Now, I'm not proposing that we do that. What's that?
No, it doesn't translate into a 30% increase, and we're talking about the year-over-year increases, which it doesn't translate into a 30% increase.
Okay,
What people pay.
so it's year-over-year increases.
Yes.
So do we know what that total number is then? in terms of a percentage? If we're not doing year over year, what's the total percentage of increase?
Well, we've got it for you this year. Again, year over year would be a 10% this year. Again, Madam Chair, if you let me, I understand the numbers that are kind of being thrown around, and it's important to sort of normalize these a little bit as well. So in this, we have what is considered in Florida very moderate tax increases. It's not uncommon at all for a county in Florida to receive a 25% increase every year. We average somewhere between 6-7%. This is a good year. The secret sauce, if you will, in Leon County has been, for commissioners who've been here a long time, they know this. The thing that we've been able to do over the years is when our property tax values have plummeted, when we've had scares, 1%, 2%, we've not increased taxes. We've not. Other counties have. We've not. We've held the line. And what we did was we drew down our reserves over that period of time. And we counted on that consistency. You'll note this board doesn't increase taxes one year and decrease taxes the next year. That's why we talk about that 13. That stability allows us to provide stability for taxpayers over that period of time. And so, again, while you may have fluctuations like this in a good year, which is this year, by holding the millage rate constant, you're able to provide stability for the next year, where your cost of doing business, and as you can see from this budget, notwithstanding the comments that have been made, this is no frills. This is opening the doors. This is having a responsible infrastructure plan. This is no general revenue positions, none. Show me another county that has no positions year in and year out on a consistent basis. But it does provide you that stability over a period of time. So again, we don't generally fluctuate, and it puts the board in a very advantageous position by taking that long view and evening out those spikes over a period of years. So again, just for perspective, just wanted to add that piece.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. County Administrator. Commissioner.
Thank you. So we have an $18 million, and Vince, no offense.
Sure.
Okay, but a good year for us is a bad year for taxpayers. All right? They're paying more money. Their tax bill is going to go up. Right? I mean, the tax bill is going to go up. The money that's coming out of their pocket is going to go up. And that's happened for 3 straight years in an incredibly inflationary environment. Incredible inflationary environment where we've had increases in EMS, MSTUs, fire service fees, Waste Pro. I'm just trying to be sensitive to the real taxpayers here. Okay? And I don't anticipate there's any desire on this board to do a millage rate rollback. But I want it to be very clear that when we talk about 5% across the board pay raises, we're talking about it in this context. I'm trying to put this into context. We're talking about it in the context of 2 years in a row of 5% across the board pay increases that amount to recurring costs in perpetuity. And I think that's something we need to consider. Now, one last thing. We're talking about $18.7 million in millage rate revenue increase. Is that correct?
Yes.
What amount of that goes to the sheriff's office? Like a lot, right?
Yes. The sheriff's budget is increasing by $10.4 million this year.
Right. So the county itself is only seeing about $8 million in actual money coming to the county for our capital improvements, our services provision, increased gas costs, parks and rec maintenance, all those things. $8 million out of how much is the total budget? 350 million, 450 million?
377.
357, right?
77.
377. I think people in the world need to understand that. All right? The sheriff's office is getting a lot of this, and for good reason. They got to pay their deputies. They got to run our jail. They got to, do what they got to do. But I do think it's important to understand the reality of these numbers on regular tax-paying folks In that context, when we're talking about contemplating a 5% across the board pay increase, that's going to cost $1.3 million additional recurring dollars in perpetuity. That's $13 million over 10 years. That's $26 million over 20 years. That's on top of 10% over the last 2 years. And so I just feel like when we go back to our communities, when we go back to our constituents, we have to be able to articulate and justify why we say for 13 years we have not raised the millage, but over the past 13 years, those property tax projections have gone up substantially. Those revenues have gone up substantially. I think it's important for people to understand that so has the cost of doing business. Okay? So is the cost of having deputies that are paid well, the cost of running a jail, the cost of operating presidential elections and presidential election years at the supervisor's office. We're talking about $377 million budget here. When we have partner governments with 3 times that much budget. All right, so I just want people to understand that, and I want to articulate that very well. That, Commissioner Proctor, we flirted with rate rollbacks in January, and now here we are pressing forward with a $6.9 million revenue projection, and let's just spend it immediately, right? So I just want us to think about that in that context. I appreciate the work you guys are doing. I know that this is a difficult job. I know that the concept of rate rollbacks is just not something that you want to understand because you're being asked to put square pegs in round holes all day long and make things fit and operate a government. But I just think we are asking a lot from taxpayers. We need to be real efficient and lean with how we operate and spend that money. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Well. Mr. County Administrator, I'm going to ask you to respond, but I'm going to ask you to also address this. I know we are looking at an increase, but I don't think, if you can address,
Sure.
The total increase does not necessarily translate into increase of property taxes. We have new subdivisions, we have new houses, we have new businesses. So will you just sort of get into that as well?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Exactly the point that I was going to make, notwithstanding the very good points that Commissioner Welch makes, which speak to us in terms of how we approach the county budget as well. But yes, what you're seeing in terms of the property value increases are generally speaking the new commercial construction, the Amazons of the world, new apartment complexes perhaps. The people who are paying taxes predominantly are under, say, our homes that have been in their home for a while. They're capped, of course, in terms of how much their property taxes can go up each year under that provision. So again, that's important to consider. The Amazons of the world, large apartment complexes, that sort of thing, they're paying their fair share. And obviously they created very substantial impact from us from a public infrastructure standpoint and a services standpoint. The difference between April, when we had the 6.5% increase contemplated, and today, commissioners, is really simplified on page 4, where we have that $6.9 million and how we are recommending that be balanced in the budget. And so on page 4, you'll see that those bullets add up to $6.9 million. And again, this is where we seek your direction. This is your budget. And so, but you'll see very clearly here that the first bullet are increases in the constitutional officers' budgets. Again, and we time it this way throughout the budget process on purpose. We don't complete our evaluations of the constitutional officers until we know, again, what the amount of money we're dealing with. A lot of times when money is not available in a certain year, we say, Sheriff, we can't do the fleet this year, maybe next year. We can't do the step plan this year, maybe 2 years from now. And this is kind of the iterative process that we go through. But you'll see very clearly the 683 increases in the constitutional officers, including the clerk, the property appraiser, and tax collector. We could talk about each of those. Some of those are driven just by the revenue increases. The sheriffs, which we talked about, which is 2 host deputies and 1 additional patrol deputy. You see the number there. The third bullet is our increased Medicaid payments. That's a state mandate. That's a requirement. We have no discretion there. The fourth bullet is at 226, which is judiciary. Our judiciary has requested, and our judicial officers have requested some additional Article 5 funding. That's required by the Florida Constitution for us to provide that funding. The real discretionary areas here, commissioners, if you're asking me, and we'd be very happy to facilitate whatever the direction is of the board, is the bottom two. It's your infrastructure, $3.6 million, which we're recommending that you fund for storm readiness this year, and that can be funded at any amount less than that the board determines is appropriate to do, and the 1.3 on the 5%. Other than that, again, in terms of my recommendations, I would, again, as you look at the budget, those are the areas where I think the board has the most flexibility, if you will. And again, happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Thank you. Is follow-up on point? Commissioner Welch.
Vince, can you tell us what the Save Our Homes projected, if that were to pass, what's the hit to the budget in November?
Oh,
The amendment, the expansion of the homestead, right?
About $350,000 in FY26.
Okay, so that potentially is just a $350,000 hit?
For the first year. That will continue to grow each year.
Right. So my concern also, and I want us to think about this in the context of how we vote on this today in terms of these last two items. I trust the staff's $3.6 million assessment for Brent and them, what they do, what they need. If they say that's what they need, I trust that's what they need. But I think that we have to at least try and exercise some fiscal restraint as commissioners and as staff when we look at the dark clouds on the horizon, whether we're talking about COLA increases potentially from the state, which are going to continue to come back, whether we talk about these homestead expansions and homestead exemption expansions and things like that, and then not to mention the storms, which we now see in increasing regularity and increasing intensity and increasing costs. $7 million in storm debris issues on top of, what was it, $1 million in Idalia? 300,000, 500,000, something like that. I think you said, I was kind of walking the room, that we did get a disaster declaration from the president, so that's great. We'll get reimbursed, I assume, for a lot of that cost.
In part, yes.
But obviously we have a responsibility to make sure that we have a CAT fund that is stable and that is established and that is sound. And I think that, whether we're talking about floods or tornadoes, or we're not, hurricanes are now third on the list, right? We've got to think about those things. But I think as commissioners, we have to be able to justify, when we go talk to our constituents, why a 10% in 2020, was it 23, 24 fiscal year, 10% property value increase, 10% year over year. They're going to say, I'm getting hammered in every direction. I got folks in Killearn Lakes now getting $300 increases in their utility bill from the city because the city has decided to go from $145 a year to $445 a year in their sewer service fee for people who don't even have sewer in Killearn Lakes. So again, these compounding costs, to Commissioner Proctor's point in January, they're hammering people. They're hurting. This is real money. This is real people's bottom lines. I mean, if your cost of living in your home has gone up $600 over the last 3 or 4 years, that's substantial. Between property taxes and costs for rate increases at utilities, I mean, that's $600-700. I mean, we're not even talking about the private insurance market and things that we can impact in this state where we've let the insurance market run rampant and people are left dangling with huge insurance premiums. I just wish, I want us to be thoughtful with how we budget other people's money, how that compounding effect is impacting people's bottom line. And I just think that I'm trying to say these things to put it into context, okay, when we're talking about another $1.3 million recurring revenue issue. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Welch. Commissioner Caban, and then Commissioner Proctor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've thoroughly enjoyed some of this robust conversation and listening to feedback from our fellow commissioners. First off, Mr. Administrator, I want to say thank you for all the effort that your team put into this budget. I'm very thankful that you guys presented us with a balanced budget and not putting us in a difficult situation where there is a deficit. And so for that, I'm thankful. I do have a couple questions for for you, Mr. Administrator, just briefly. Now that the FEMA declaration is signed, what are we thinking on timetable to get that $7 million reimbursed?
It's a great question, Commissioner Caban, and it varies dramatically. You know, we've got a lot of experience with the FEMA reimbursement process. As you've seen here, it doesn't take us very long to stand up teams, and just like we have with Team Leon recently, we have a FEMA reimbursement team that goes immediately into effect. And I give Rashonda a lot of credit and the team that she's built. They're really the model in terms of getting FEMA money reimbursed quickly. And other counties really come to us and say, how in the world are you able to do it? But it varies dramatically. There are a lot of variables in the process. But having said that, it's could be a calendar year before those dollars are completely restored. And but again, it depends on a lot of factors. But it's months to a year. You have anything to add on that, Rashonda? Okay.
What about for relief for the businesses and individuals? Is that the same timetable?
Individual assistance, which is included in this declaration, as we mentioned, that gets stood up very quickly, and the federal government's reimbursement schedule is almost in real time. Well, when people come to me, we will stand up assistance centers to help them at the branch libraries and that sort of thing, as we've done in previous events. But the FEMA's process in that regard for individual assistance is almost real time.
Not as quick as Leon County, though.
Not as quick as us, but almost.
Okay, awesome. Again, just testament to what our staff did and what we did as a board with Team Leon. Very proud of that initiative, and thank you all for supporting that. The question in regards to the library, I saw that we're going to have a cafe in there. Is that something that Leon County is going to be the landlord of?
We've actually meeting to talk to you about that.
No, I don't want to.
No, Pamela?
It's actually a cafe area. We will be offering more higher end vending machines. So it's not really a cafe, it's a cafe space.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we're not nothing with me, because I'm not in this industry, but I want to make sure that we're not competing with local coffee shops downtown, La Ferita, Goodies, lunch places like Hayward House, Argonaut Coffee, which is going into Cascades. I just wanted a point of clarification on that. I believe Commissioner Welch brought this up, but what is the percent increase on property values this last year?
Last year was 7.87%.
Okay. Do we know this year yet?
This year's at 10.3.
And did we evaluate any possibility to do a millage rate reduction?
Not unless we get that direction from the board.
Okay.
Obviously.
Commissioner Caban, can I just ask a clarification from Ms. Bradley? When you said 10.3, he asked for what the increase in property values. Are we talking about tax?
We're talking about taxable values.
Okay, not specific increase on individual property.
Right.
Correct. Okay, I just want to make that clarification.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So I first want to point out a couple strong points. I'm pleased with this budget. One, the bus stop lighting program, the report on that was incredible to see. I'm looking now, seeing all the highlights of street lights completed in my district, as well as bus lights across my district. Commissioner Proctor, one of these is Crawfordville Highway and Buttonwillow Drive for school bus stop lighting. So, it's progress, and I'm very pleased that that is an initiative that we brought to the board December of 2023, I believe, and to see it on this fiscal year is very rewarding to see that be brought into action. Mr. Administrator, what is the status on the private roads? I know that it's not, as of right now, in this fiscal year, but I know there's a budget item coming back in July. So is there still opportunity to include it in this fiscal year?
Yes, I was trying not to make eye contact with Ben and Brent over there because I've been spending a lot of time on evaluating options. Yes, and Commissioners, you know, we probably have 5 existing programs, probably 5 or 6 existing programs where we assist residents in bringing private roads, for example, up to standards. And there are different 2/3 projects that you're very familiar with, and there's emergency road projects. Thankfully, we're going to bring all that back to you in July. But to go to Commissioner Caban's question, one of the things that the board wanted to see was how to deal with so many of these private roads that we have in cases where perhaps residents, citizens can't afford to bring the private roads up to standards. And so we're evaluating that. And yes, Commissioner Caban, we're bringing back recommendations for you in July. We believe we've got the revenues available in the current year. We believe that they exist. One of the things that the board had a lot of foresight with is dedicating the 2% of the sales tax revenues to the LIFE program, which is right on point to this program, which is the livable infrastructure for everyone. You know, we've done a lot of things with LIFE to just bring basic livable standards to people who need them in the community. But Commissioner Caban, we believe we have sufficient revenues available in LIFE to meet the demand that we would anticipate having on a program that, again, that we would try to encourage as much demand as possible and have as many people as we're interested to participate in that program. So we think we've got it within existing funding. But we could talk more about specific dollars.
I just want to make sure that we're on the same page there.
You got it.
So, Commissioners, I want to say that I share a lot of the same sentiment that Commissioner and Vice Chair Welch has in regards to where we are on the increase in our budget and property values. You know, I think that there are some systematic issues of things that we're missing and also how we are budgeting. For example, we have a penny sales tax that's going to generate over $1 billion over the next 20 years. And there's not enough conversation. You know, that's a Leon County sales tax, right? And there's not enough conversation, and I don't think Leon County is getting its fair share to have full control over that money to cover some of the costs that we have, such as public works. When you look at other counties and how they utilize their 1% sales tax or their penny sales tax, most counties, Leon County controls that penny. Marion County uses it for capital improvements and capital infrastructure. They use it for public safety. And so when we talk about us being constrained, you know, we have $28 million coming in this budget cycle and $28 million immediately coming out. I think that's going to be a problem for us in the future. So I think we're missing an opportunity with the penny sales tax. I don't think Leon County is getting enough use out of that money personally. Additionally, let's talk about appropriations, right? There's a lot of projects that we're spending money on in Blueprint, and there's a lot of projects, we're talking about capital improvement here in our budget. Why is some of that money not coming to us in the form of appropriations? These are ways where we could get state funding to cover costs of local taxpayers at this budget. You know, Commissioner Welch, I would support an initiative or a motion to at least have an evaluation of some sort of millage rate reduction to come back to us in the July meeting. I would support a motion like that. I actually have written down right here, you know, we had in our April workshop $6.9 million of additional revenues come to us as a board. What I don't like about that is we had a balanced budget in April without the $6.9 million. Now that there's an additional $6.9 million coming in, it's already spent, and we also have a balanced budget. You know, I am fully confident in our staff here. They have shown that, I mean, this team can do things very quickly, and they're capable of a lot of different things as we've seen. And I think if we went to staff and said, hey, we want to reduce the millage rate by $5 million, that covers the 2 host deputies from the sheriff, that covers the the position that I requested for Highway 20 and the National Forest. That also gives staff a $1.3 million raise across the board, a 5% increase. So there's a way where we can reduce the blow to taxpayers. Our employees are taken care of, and also we are still increasing our revenue as a county to cover some of the daily necessities of local government. I think there's a way for it to be done, and I would at least like to entertain an evaluation come back in the July meeting with options. Let us look at, hey, let's reduce funding here or reduce funding here, because we have a 7.87% increase on property values. Now we have 10.3% increase on property values. And there's a lot of sentiment among this board about affordable housing. And we look at, in 2020, I looked this up last night, the Leon County budget was roughly $230 million. Now we're here discussing a $370 million budget, right? That's $140 million that have come into this government in the last 4 years. So I think about how folks in my district in the 32304 zip code, we're talking roughly 35% increase, give or take a little bit, from 2020. We're not seeing wages go up really to subsidize that or to match that per se. I would entertain and I would support a motion that brings some evaluations back to the board.
Commissioner Command, let me ask you if you will do this for me. Item 2, we will be looking at trim.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we entertain that motion once we complete with?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and let's entertain it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll wrap it up. So that's just that's my sentiment. I think there's a way where we can accomplish everything that we want to accomplish.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Commissioner Matters and then Commissioner Proctor. And then I'm gonna ask us to look at staff recommendations and we'll vote on it. Commissioner Matters.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Administrator.
Madam Chair, Commissioner.
There was a time when we went through a recession. When we were in that recession, did we raise the mills rate?
We did not.
What did we do with staff?
Excuse me?
What did we do with staffing during that recession time?
We cut staffing significantly.
What did we do with our road projects? Capital improvement?
Held the line, reduced.
How long has it taken for us to recover from the fund balances that we had to take when we were in that recession?
Many years, Rashonda could provide more specifics on this, but we're probably just now, maybe last budget year, getting to within our threshold just from the not the Great Recession, but even the 2013 recession.
How many recessions have we seen since 2010? Or let's say since 2004, maybe 2?
Yes, and we in government, the way our values work, we tend to lag significantly the recovery.
You said how many millage increases or rollbacks have we had since 2010?
Well, we've kept the millage rate constant for that period of time.
So when times were bad, we took those blows and we made the adjustments we had to make as a county to make sure that we didn't add extra costs to our constituents, correct?
Yes, and that was an intentional strategy on the part of previous boards to do that.
And when times started to improve, we used those dollars to start to make up for the lost time in the projects that we couldn't do during those times that times were bad, and we decided that we didn't want to put a burden on our taxpayers, correct?
Correct.
I think the conversation that we're having is a good one. I think that when we talk about making sure that we can do everything we can to make sure we're fiscally responsible for our constituents, it's never a bad thing. But I also think that sometimes we forget that our staff, administration on down, our constituents too. And Mr. Administrator, would you ever envision putting yourself in a position through budgeting that would put this county's fiscal future in jeopardy?
No.
When you consider the conversations that we have about staff raises and other things that we contemplate spending on, do you take in consideration the future budgetary years and how those things may impact those budgets?
Yes, we do.
And your recommendations are based off of such?
Yes.
If you felt that in the future budgets, we would not be able to sustain ourselves, and it was fiscally irresponsible for us to move in a certain direction, would you simply say staff recommendation? I mean, would you simply say commission direction, or would you give some other narrative or some other option for us to consider from staff as a recommendation?
Yes, we've never hesitated to make recommendations which dramatically constrained our resources, notwithstanding the additional increases to include this budget, as reflected in many areas of the budget.
Would you say that we're pretty fiscally restrained and responsible county?
Yes, yeah, that's evidenced by our benchmarks.
How do we compare in size, likewise, counties as far as staff is concerned?
We are the lowest. And I should mention we do that with the most tax revenue off the tax rolls, which is a considerable challenge.
Organizationally, when we went through that recession, the last recession we went through, I think it was when I first got here, somewhere around there, staffing size, how we compare today as we were back to then?
I'd have to get those numbers for you, but I can't remember in recent budget years adding very much in terms of positions to the county.
I've been here. We hadn't added much. It's been a position here, position there. Look, I understand the concerns that we have as a board, particular commissioners have as a board, but I just, being here for a while, I think we have to understand that over time, things will get good and then things will get bad. And holding that millage rate where it is and keeping it constant is the best way for us to be responsible to our constituents. Because when times are bad and we're not collecting as much revenue, we're not going to go to a rollback then. Although we could, we're not going to. And then when times are good, let's continue to keep where we are, but be responsible with those dollars so we can pull from fund balance when we don't have the money to do what we need to do. Mr. Administrator, do you remember about what the average was of fund balance we would use year after year to support when times were bad?
$5 to $6 million.
$5 to $6 million. And what's our ranges as far as the fund balance is concerned? I think it's on the high end and on the low, 18 and 30, right?
15 to 30.
15%, 30%? What did we get down to fund balance wise, Mr. Administrator? You remember back then when we were pulling?
Yeah, it was down to or below the minimum policy thresholds.
And where are we at now, percentage wise?
About 26%.
Trying to work our way up?
That's prior to us replenishing the CAP fund for debris removal and setting proper cash flow for hurricane season.
So a lot of these things that we're doing, the 3.6 million, I mean, if you guys want to lower the raises and you do what you want to do with it, I'm totally fine. Our staff deserves every penny we can give them. They work hard for us. And we're amongst the lowest amount of staff per capita in the state of Florida. So if we give them 5%, I'm totally fine with that because they actually really earn it. Nobody does it better than us. How many awards did we get nationally this year?
We don't keep count, but over 100.
Thank you.
Over 10.
So,
Over 10.
I think the 3.6, if we don't spend it now, if we don't, while we have these dollars to spend, if we don't do these things now, we won't be able to when times are hard. But if we do them now, then at least we're getting this stuff out of the way. So it's almost like a mad rush to get as much as you can done while times are good, because you know when they're bad, you're not going to be able to get any of this stuff done. So I'm proud of the budget staff built. I think it's fiscally responsible. I think it takes into account the fact that that you've been here long enough to know what it's like when times are bad, and that you're trying to account for those things right now. So we won't have to pass on that burden for things that we can't handle when times aren't so good. So I'm totally satisfied with the budget that we have here. I appreciate our constitutional partners for working with us. Mr. Administrator, when we were in those down times, what did we do with what did we ask our constitutionals to do?
Our constitutional officers pretty much participated in the restrictions that we imposed on ourselves.
Commissioner Proctor, you remember those times when we would send letters to the constitutionals asking them to decrease their budget 5%, and I can't remember a time that they did not accommodate us or did not do the best they could to decrease their budgets so we can account for us not having to raise the millage in those times either. So I caution us as we put the narrative out there that we're putting out today, that we take into account the fact that it's taken us 12, 13 years to get to a point where we have actually gotten back on our feet, and now we're trying to really account for the fact that we can do some great things so that when times get bad again, we won't have to raise the millage. We won't have to look at it. So let's say we do a rollback today, which again, I don't think it's a good idea at all. When those times come up, when the property's values are down 5%, are we going to look at doing a millage rate increase then? I just don't see it. A rollback is what we call it then. It's the same thing. It'd be a rollback then too. We're going to roll back to the previous year and add more burden then. I just don't see us doing it. Last and final question, Madam Chair. Mr. Administrator, can you give me some idea of what the valuation decreases by percentages were when we were going through those recessions?
Gosh, they're very substantial. We'd have to get that information
I remember.
for you.
They were 8%. It was 9%. It was 10%. It was 5%. It was. It was not anything foreign to what we're looking at today when we're talking about what the increases in values are today. So in essence, what I'm saying to you all is that over time, these things tend to balance themselves out. And we have to really, really think about and consider hard what we are saying here today and how we are understanding what we're trying to do today. We're trying to make sure we can get ahead so that when things aren't so good, that we can then take whatever hits we got to take on behalf of our constituents. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Maddox. Commissioner Proctor, did you have a comment?
I did, Madam Chair. I wanted for the second round of questions.
Okay, this is the last round.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I repudiate what Commissioner is suggesting here, Commissioner Welch, that somehow or the other we are being frivolous and we're not being prudent in our expenditures. The comparative charts of our expenditures, even shared among locals, 4 counties around us, speaks for itself. We get more bang for the dollar than all those counties that Rashonda had up on that screen. I know this is political season, and it's very easy to want to act like we're doing something wrong. But asking for a raise for people who work hard for this community is neither illegal, immoral, or an undesirable thing to do. And we have a responsibility to carry forth the families people who work for us. At this table right here, you're not going to find Commissioner Welch, and I don't know how long it's going to take you to see and appreciate this. This is the 13th year in a row that this board has not touched millage rate. Now, if you want to look across the street, there's an 8.5% increase of property taxes raised. I know you're not going to support the 100% increase for a pay raise for city commissioners because you don't want to pay a 5% for your own workers. That's going to be more money for them. You want to talk about what we do efficient.
Let's don't get personal.
I'm not personal. I'm talking about public facts.
Yes, indeed.
This is public information to help a comparison for my colleague to understand we're good government. We've not done anything that's not fruitful. We're not calling for a 2% raise for first responders. We calling for 5% across the board. We've not projected and said there's going to be a $40 million building built, then come back for $135 million. We are not that government. And there is nothing that our staff has done or we have done that have wishy-washy numbers all over the place. And as Commissioner Maddox has pointed out, it balances out, high tide, low tide, high tide. It balances out over time. And everything that we have done has resulted. It's from the rising value of property assessed by King Akiyami on people's property itself. The rate has not moved. It's the value of people's homes that has gone up. We have received the windfall of that value. It's that value increase that we've operated to do this, that, and the other. We ain't got a 8.5. Madam Attorney, may I ask a question? Doesn't the state cap a property increase to 3%? Is that accurate? What is the cap on what we can do per, anybody know?
Yes.
The Save Our Homes cap is 3%.
3%. But the city of Tallahassee has imposed an 8.5%, okay? Above and beyond, twice beyond, 2.5 times beyond Save Our Homes. So if you want to talk about what we are doing, we're operating within the strictures of what's imposed. We have not gone up on millage rate at all. We have performed, we've taken 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread and performing miracles, literally. So if it was not that way, I would be raising hell up here and would not allow for, I would have asked for Vince Long to have been gone by now if the narrative you're painting had been one that's facts substantively back up. Got 35 years right there, about to go to the House. They're going to reduce the 500 and some years that they hold collectively. We got 20 years, 20 years, 20, 20, 20. We got, like 200 years worth of people who, these not trashified people. They talk trash, but they're not trashified per se. And they do an extraordinary job. These workers up in here sitting back on that wall, all of them, you can't call any of them and they are not responsive. We don't get calls that county employees is talking down to people who call them. You don't get calls that say that the county employees are arrogant. We don't have that frustration, and the citizens are not frustrated by the tone or tonal quality with which the professional effort that our managers are able to maintain with employees. That is crucial. It is important. And if the values of property, we didn't create how you do it. I asked the question, how is it that CSC seems to be paying more money than the city and the county for homeless shelters? Shinkton explained the process and said the formula is a fair formula, notwithstanding how it looked up there on the chart to me. So the judgment of the people who are caring for our mission, our strategic initiatives, all that stuff, they're doing a hell of a job. And our job We have not gone up on tax on the millage rate, but it is not our fault at all that the people's property value for which the millage rate is applied has increased. That's not our fault. So I believe, Commissioner Bond, we could do both of these things. We can take a look. It's not, the librarian sitting up there, she said she got 20,000 new books for us to take a look at, to look into information. And if she can bring 20,000 books for the whole community to look into, why can't we look into a couple sheets of paper that speculates about what's probable, what could occur? And I think that in looking at those 2 sheets of paper, because I don't like to read that much, to be honest about it, but I read what I have to read. And I want to thank, did you know today, Commissioner, that this commissioner, me, said that I didn't see light in that graph in the lineup of streets and names and da-da-da-da. And we had a staff person sitting right there say, no, go to page 350 something, it's right there at the bottom on the last line. That's a hell of a catch. Who you know can do that? That's because they prepped and they prepared. Even when I'm going off the track, I appreciate, because I just want to look at the bullets and go down the bullet. But the narrative, somebody's got to wade out in the weeds and read the fine print. And that's exactly what you saw. A staff said, no, Commissioner, don't fall off the train, get back on. And he took me directly to some page way down in Cottondale somewhere and found out and told me exactly what line. That's what we appreciate. That's why they're worth 5%. That's why all of these people in this audience can demonstrate that kind of efficiency and proficiency in the clutch. And I'm very proud of our staff. And without the 5% increase of this year, the bounty for $1.2 or $3 million, Rashonda said, without the increase, I cannot support a budget this year that does not respect, that does not include our workers who this year got floods. What we got this year? We got tornadoes. This year we got other calamities of various types. They've done a hell of a job. And I'm asking you to walk with me, to walk with us, and to regard and to broaden the perspective of who these people are, what they do. And I want to thank you, Ms. Otero. Ms. Otero told us that the city today is considering setting up its own storm response fund. That's sort of what we were talking about with the mini grant, Vince, that the city, but I'm sure they've overheard us talking first. They didn't have these ideas. They say they're going to call FEMA. But we create, we come up with stuff, and if people pay a close enough attention and follow us, they would do a lot better than an 8.5% increase on property. Now, that's a hell of a government that is not as efficient as the one that you're a member of. So thank you, Vince. Thank you, staff. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm asking y'all to support and make this motion, Madam Chair, if it's appropriate.
Let me do a comment before you
Okay,
do that.
it's appropriate.
Okay, hold on just a second. Thank you, Commissioner Proctor. I too want to commend staff. Ms. County Administrator, for all the hard work that you all have done throughout this last year, specifically on the budget, but as Commissioner Proctor indicated, we've had some catastrophes that where our employees have just stepped up to the plate and provided services to our community, to our citizens. But beyond that, this budget, and I recognize that there are some specific statutory requirements that we have to adhere to in our budget. But I appreciate the fact that, Mr. County Administrator, you and our budget people, you make it work in bad years. You make it work in lean years. You do the projection, which is one reason why during the last couple of months, in the face of catastrophe for our community, that we were able to step up to the plate and assist our citizens in a major way. I'm not going to reiterate what all the commissioners indicated because I do I do agree with all of the accolades as well. And I think I've given ample time for each one of the commissioners to express themselves and to commend staff and you, Mr. County Administrator, for our budget. I do support the increase in raise for our county employees. I believe they deserve it, but I don't want anybody to leave today with the misinformation that residents in Leon County had to swallow a 10.3% increase in their property taxes, because it just doesn't equate to that. We enjoyed a 10.3% increase in our budget, but that didn't solely fall on the shoulders of our property owners, on the shoulders of increase in our home values, because as the county administrator pointed out, there are many other variables that attributed to that 10.3%. So what I would like to do, commissioners, right now is entertain a motion to accept options 1 through 11 of the staff recommendation.
Madam Chair, I move options 1 through 11, reflecting staff's recommendation.
Thank you. Moved by Commissioner Proctor, second by Commissioner Maddox.
I can't. Madam Chair, on point.
Did you second it?
No, I can't. I was going to ask for, could you bifurcate? I have to recuse myself from items options 5 and 6.
Oh, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. Okay.
So could you?
Let's do it this way. It died for lack of second.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Can I make a motion?
Commissioner Proctor, can you do the motion accepting options 1 through 11, excluding option 5?
Yes, 5 and 6.
Sir?
5 and 6, Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. 5 and 6?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. 5 and 6.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair.
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
Okay. Is second by Commissioner O'Keefe? No, second by Commissioner Maddox. Okay, you have a comment? Okay. Brief comment.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. It's my one follow-up. I'll be quick. So in regards to streetlights on Crawford Road, I just had a few questions. We have this, we've done this fantastic school bus stops streetlights program, which the budget was $100,000. And as I've been told, we've done a number of streetlights. And so doing the math tells me that a streetlight installation is not a cost-intensive thing. It seems like a pretty low cost compared to the benefit. And I know that it's not a county road, it's state and city, and they're responsible for it. However, I looked at the map, because of the puzzle pieces of the city limits, some of it is in, some of it's not. And so is there anything stopping us, if the board chose to say, if it costs, $100,000 was the entire unincorporated area for school bus stops. If it costs, I'm just going to make it up and say $50,000, and we said, hey, we think it's important enough, and even if it's not our full responsibility, that we would approve that to have you approach the city and the state to say, if we fund it, will you build it? Is that any kind of possibility?
Mr. County Administrator, can you respond to that?
Before I do, I just want to get this on. Yeah, before I do, I just wanted to make sure I defer quickly to Ben and Brent, because I know we do a lot of that coordination currently, and sometimes what we do, Commissioner O'Keefe, is we lean in at times on particular segments of road and that sort of thing, and say, well, hey, if you're not going to fund this, and if it's not in your funding window, we may step up in times and do certain things like that. But let me just defer to these guys.
And I'll defer to Brent if I'm wrong, but it's covered in the agenda material. It's not a question, Commissioner, of funding. The funds have been allocated by the state. It's a question of implementation, with all respect to the city who is implementing it. Their best timeline is by fiscal year 25. That's what we've been told. So funding is not the issue.
It's not like when someone, I've never heard of this, but tries to tip the hostess with a little extra money. If we funded a little extra, they couldn't go faster. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Keefe. And I saw another hand. Was it you, Commissioner Welch? Did you have a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to be able to vote in support of these options purely because of option 11. I think it's important to understand that the county administrator's recommendation previously was for a average of 0 to 5% pay raise, with or 0 to 5% merit-based raise with an average of 3%, which means if you're to say that not supporting option 11 is not supporting pay raises for our staff is incorrect. I support pay raises for our staff. I support pay raises for our staff based on merit with an average of 3%. That means some of these rock stars around the table would get 5%. And some people would get 1%. And some people would get 3%. And so again, I say my whole point with the contemplation of rollback rates and considering those kinds of things is on that option. I understand that our staff deserve raises, and that's my point. Some deserve more than others. We've given 5% across the board for 2 years. This is the third year. It is the administrator's recommendation previously that we do it that way, not a 5% across the board, because that costs $1.3 million recurring dollars. So if this is the option, if this is the motion that we're going to go, I'm not going to make a substitute motion. I'm just not going to be able to vote for any of these. I'm going to have to vote no.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Welch. All those in favor, let it be known.
I was going to make a substitute motion.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Commissioner O'Keefe.
Thank you. I was going to offer a substitute motion so as you wouldn't have to vote against the whole budget if you didn't want. Substitute motion to approve staff recommendation for 1 through 4 and 7 through 10.
I'll second that.
1 through 4 and 7 through 10. Okay, is there a second by Commissioner Minor?
Well,
Any
Madam Chair,
discussion?
that right there, this substitute motion clearly seeks to gut and cut the throat of our employees' pay raise.
I'll make a motion next. I'm just trying to.
No.
Okay.
You don't have 11 in this motion. This substitute motion does not carry.
Commissioner Pryor, don't do
option
that.
11.
Hold on 1 second, please, please,
Tell me what he
please.
said. What you said,
Commissioner Proctor, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm asking Commissioner O'Keefe, what did he say? Is option number 11 with the 5% pay raise for all Leon County constitutional officers included in this motion? Is that in there?
Commissioner Proctor, this is just, was going to make a next motion that does have 11. That's all, is allow.
Why you can't put 11 in the thing? It's already set up right.
I was just trying to be a friendly commissioner we had one commissioner who would vote against the whole budget because of number 11. And so I was trying to be a good buddy here and give that person opportunity. And then we can all vote purely on 11. Plus, Commissioner Proctor, we get a straight up and down vote. So everyone gets to know what each commissioner thinks about 11.
And that's why I seconded it.
Okay, all right.
Okay, and Commissioner Minor, you second.
Thank you very much.
Correct? Okay, so we've got a motion on the table.
You can
Anything
vote for what
further?
you're talking about. All right.
Commissioner Minor, briefly, please. We've spent much too much time.
Thank
Go
you,
ahead.
Madam Chair. I've actually got 2 points to make. In previous budget discussions for fiscal year 25, I've recused myself from voting on budgetary items that involved Whole Child Leon because my wife had a consulting contract with that organization. And today's agenda item, that would be included in option 1. The term for my wife's consulting contract now has expired, and as such, my wife and Whole Child Leon are not currently engaged in any business relationship. Therefore, today I will be voting on the preliminary budget in its entirety without any recusal. I'm not required to say this, but just for the record, I want to make that plain because in previous budget workshops, I had recused myself in that item.
Thank you.
And so, I want to thank Commissioner O'Keefe for making this substitute motion because I was going to do something similar. I think Commissioner Welch has got a very good point, and I did the fourth grade math on this. You know, we have passed 5% across the board increases for the past 2 fiscal years. So what that means is that we have given across the board for every single county employee a raise of 10.25% for the past 2 years. If we do that again for a third time, 5% across the board, that will then mean that we will have given an across the board for every single county employee a raise of 15.76%. They deserve that. You all deserve that. If we instead go back to what the original recommended staff recommendation was, which was an average of 3% increase, 0 to 5, based on performance evaluations, that still gives our county employees, every single one of them, an average, it's an average now, of 13.5% over 3 years. You all deserve that. You are incredible. And as we've mentioned many times, for years, the per capita expenditure in Leon County for our county staff is among the very, very best. You all are working hard. You're doing more with fewer people than many other county governments throughout the state. And I recognize that. And you all deserve another 5% across the board raise. But does that mean we should do that? Given the fact that we almost were out at $223 million from the legislature requiring us to do some additional things. With the new session coming up, it's very likely that that financial burden will be placed upon us next fiscal year. When we talk about across the board 5%, that's in perpetuity. That is in perpetuity. That is a permanent increase for this amount going forward.
It ain't no 100% though.
Commissioner Proctor, I have the floor, sir. I have the floor.
Ain't like 100%.
I have the floor. You know what? My wife's going to kill me, but you know the fact that I'm not going to vote on number 11, which we'll talk about later, doesn't mean I don't care about employees. I'm going to forfeit my cost of living increase, Commissioner Proctor, and have that amount directed to the employee bonuses or employee salary increase. If you will do the same, if you will do the same, I will do that.
Commissioner Maddox, I'm not sure if that's proper.
No,
I'm not sure.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
to
sir.
insinuate that me voting against a 5% across the board increase means that I don't care about the value of our county employees is ludicrous, and I find that insulting.
Give them some money then.
I'm happy to give my own personal cost of living increase.
Commissioners, I commended you all about your congeniality early on, so let's maintain respect.
I
Thank
just
you,
think we need
Commissioner
to
Minor.
maintain civility and decorum and not imply that people on this dais do not care about our county employees.
Thank you, Commissioner
Thank you,
Minor.
Madam Chair.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All accolades and no money don't mean anything.
Thank
Like
you,
telling
Commissioner
telling your
Proctor.
wife you love
Thank
her,
you,
don't give her
Commissioner
no money.
Proctor. Thank you so much. One brief comment from Commissioner Caban, and then we're going to vote on the substitute motion.
Thank you. I have a point of clarification. 'Cause
Yes, sir.
I think I'm a bit confused based on a question I asked from staff and then a question that you followed up with. So I just want to get a quick point of clarification with the county administrator.
That's fine.
Just straight up question. What is the percent average property tax increase for households with this budget?
For a household,
Just straight increase. Like what is the, so there's X amount of increase to the budget right now that we're voting on. What is the percent increase on property taxes with that?
for a household with Save Our Homes that's filed for a homestead amendment, they're limited at a 3% cap in growth.
Has
year
that
over year.
passed?
Yes, many years ago.
Okay, so no household in Leon County will have more than a 3% increase with this budget.
That is homesteaded and under the Save Our Homes cap. Yes.
Okay.
If you're renting out the house, it's a different
No, I'm
story.
not talking about homestead, I'm talking about properties, not homesteads. There's a lot of properties out there that are not homestead.
Correct.
Correct.
What is that amount?
Different answer. Yeah, it's a different answer because they would not be under Save Our Homes.
Okay.
In that case.
My
You're right.
fundamental issue with this budget, and I will vote on it to be in line with my colleagues, okay? But I still would like to have an evaluation to look at rolling back the millage rate to some extent. We have a lot of conversation about affordable housing, okay? With this budget, property taxes go up, which means rent goes up, okay? We can't control the housing insurance crisis, okay? We can't control what the city of Tallahassee does. We can't control what the school board does, but we can control what's in front of us right now. It's in our purview, okay? I'm telling you right now, I will support this to be in line with my colleagues. I think it would be, we owe it to taxpayers at least to have in our July meeting, come back with an evaluation as part of this motion to look at a slight millage rate reduction.
We want to do that on item 2 when we look at trim. Can you do the motion then?
Then?
Yeah, after this
Okay,
item. We'll
great.
do it item 2.
Okay.
And clarification, Mr. County Administrator, is it an accurate statement to say with this budget, property taxes are going up? I mean, the property appraiser is the one that tells us the rate and what have you. We are recommending ad valorem from the county standpoint to remain the same. So is that an accurate statement? I'm just concerned that we're making statements that might not necessarily be factual.
Yes, we receive revenues from differently situated properties that have layers and layers of different, but we understand that the general question that commissioners often have, and it's not to exclude renters and other folks, but it's generally from a homeowner's standpoint, on the average home with an exemption, what would the impact be? That's a lot of the math that we do. And as we've said, in that case, they'd be limited to the Save Our Homes cap, which would be.
So, Mr. County Administrator, whether we pass this budget or not, that same tax impact is going to affect Leon County
for those
property owners. Am I correct?
That is correct, for those properties.
Okay.
Madam Chair, to answer your question. Madam Chair, to answer your question.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Mann.
Mr. Administrator, unless it's changed since I've been here, I was always taught that no increase in the millage is not classified as a tax increase.
That's incorrect.
Unless it's changed, has it changed since I've been here?
Well, since you've been here, yes, it probably has changed.
Okay.
The definitions have changed a lot,
Okay.
but again, it has more to, it's defined now by the amount of revenue you bring from your.
Madam Chair, on point.
Okay, hold on just a second. Are you finished, Commissioner? Yes. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Caban.
What is the definition of a property tax increase per state statute?
If you collect more money than the rollback rate.
So this is a property tax increase?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. Now, we have the substitute motion on the floor to accept options 1, 2, 3, 4, and options 7, 8, 9, and 10. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so Commissioner O'Keefe, Commissioner Minor, Commissioner Caban, and Commissioner Welch. Okay, all those not in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. I'm against. Did you vote in favor, Commissioner Mann?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, you did, and Commissioner Proctor?
I voted in favor because we're going to make another motion.
Oh, okay, so it's 1 against, Madam Clerk. Okay. Commissioner O'Keefe.
I'd like to make a motion to move option 11.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of option 11, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition to Commissioner Minor and Commissioner Welch? Nay. Okay, thank you so much. Now, I'd like to get a motion for options 5. Yeah, options 5 and 6 with Commissioner Maddox recusing himself.
So, Madam Chair, let the record reflect, I recuse myself on 5 and 6 because of my employment with Family Promise of the Big Ben, which is the parent organization of the whole community. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. All right, I need to make a correction in the minutes. The first, the substitute motion by Commissioner O'Keefe was for the budget and item 7, 8, 9, 10, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you reflect my vote as in favor, Madam Clerk? Because that's in support of the budget. Thank you, Commissioner O'Keefe. Okay. All those in favor then of options 5 and 6 with Commissioner Maddox recusing himself, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay, thank you, commissioners. I appreciate it. Now, Mr. County Administrator, we're on budget workshop item. Well, let me go back. Let me ask the commissioners' indulgence for one other item as it relates to our county employees. One of the things that we looked at as helping to compensate our county employees is their annual leave carry forward. And what we did is we looked at the current carry forward leave amount is 300 hours for our employees. We looked at the city, and they allow administrators to carry forward 344 hours, regular staff 264. But then when we looked at the school board allows 360 hours carry forward for regular staff, but they allow 480 hours carry forward for its administrators. And what I'd like for us to do, and I know we're concerned, and we know that we've got great employees. We recognize that there's a restraint as far as raises and what have you, but I want us to be competitive with other governmental entities in Leon County. We don't want our employees going someplace else for lack of great benefits. And so, Commissioner Maddox, what I'd like to do is have us discuss, maybe get a recommendation that we increase the carry forward annual leave hours from 300, so we can be competitive, to 480 hours.
Madam Chair, I think you bring up an excellent point. So you were looking for 300 to 380, you said?
From 300 to 480.
To 480.
Right, and the governmental entity in this area, the max they are allowing is 480 hours, and I want us to be competitive for our employees as well.
I second your
If
motion.
you're looking for a motion, I will make the motion that we change our policy to reflect that of from 300 to 480 hours to carry over. Also, Madam Chair, that's the only thing you want us to consider on that?
That's what I'd like for us to consider on that.
That's my motion.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. Mr. County Administrator, do you?
I was just going to clarify for the commission, it does not have a budget impact.
It does not have a budget.
Well, we'll bring it back to July.
No,
Can we bring it back to July?
I would just like to make the motion I would like to make the motion that we increase our carryover hours from 300 to 480 hours.
Yeah, I second that. And I know we need a
Thank
impact
you.
statement.
Did you second it, Commissioner?
I did.
Proctor? Okay. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Thank you. Hearing none. Thank you so much, commissioners. Mr. County Administrator, we're on budget item number 2.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, agenda item number 2 seeks your direction in the establishment of the maximum millage rates for the utilization of TRIM. We're recommending options 1 and 2.
Move staff recommendation, Madam Chair.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner O'Keefe. So we've got a motion to accept staff recommendation. All those in favor, let it be known. Oh, is there discussion?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Commissioner O'Keefe.
Thank you. I held my comments on this for the item, for this one. So on the millage rate increase, I just want to say, excuse me, on the millage, whoa, we'll be very clear. On the millage rate, no change on the rate. I just want to point out a couple things. I believe that our job as a county government is to provide stability and certainty to people. And so a 13-year history continuing to 14-year of keeping a flat millage rate allows people to not wonder if it's going up or down. And when people talk to me about concern about property taxes for the county, not the city, I ask them, I tell them I think our county government operates as efficiently as possible. I don't think there's waste. And I also think we have projects that we've deemed important and strategic that we don't have money for yet. So we don't just make things up when allocations come. And I would just also point out if we were going to go with the thing that when times are good, we lower the millage rate, when times are bad, is it fair to increase it? And I just think that's why I'll be supporting a flat millage rate, is it's consistent. And I just would ask people who want to cut to consider what service do you want us to cut, what you don't want. So with that, that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Keefe. Commissioner Caban.
May I address Commissioner Maddox, Madam Chair?
I'm
May I
sorry.
address Commissioner Maddox, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Commissioner, would you be open to having an evaluation come back as part of this agenda item, just to look at if there is opportunity to come and say, hey, we could cut here, and do a slight rollback on the millage rate, and bring it to the July meeting. If there's nowhere in the budget to cut, then we'll support the millage rate. But I think we owe it to taxpayers at least to have an evaluation. We had in 2020, I looked at it last night, we had a $234 million budget. We're voting on a $370 million budget. That's $140 million that we've had in additional revenue in 4 years. That's significant.
Commissioner Caban, just for clarification, so you are asking if Commissioner Maddox would be willing to amend his motion to accept staff recommendation, but ask for an agenda item to come back with an analysis if we did a rollback?
Yes, ma'am, because we're going to vote to ratify this in July.
Okay.
So as part of that, maybe have an evaluation to say, hey, this is some options. If there's no option, there's no option.
Okay, Commissioner Proctor, you seconded. Are you? I'm sorry. Are you willing to amend your motion?
No, but Madam Chair, what I will do is I'll ask the county administrator to send all of us information on what the numbers would look like. Would you send us? Would you send an email or some kind of information out to the board to let us know what those numbers look like, so those who may want to consider it can bring it up?
So that's not part of amended motion or
It's
anything?
not part of amended motion. It's just direction for staff.
County Administrator, can you respond?
No, obviously, whatever the direction is of the board. I can tell you, Commissioners, just in case it's of interest to you, if the board was, and again, it just helps sometimes to put these things in perspective, if the board was to lower the millage rate by $5 million, let's say, for example, that would be a 0.2 mil reduction. That 0.2 mil reduction which would eliminate $5 million from the budget from somewhere, would result in a $31 savings to the average homesteaded property. But again, I throw that out there just for perspective. That would be if you lowered it by $5 million, which would be a 0.2 millage rate reduction. Again, just for you to have that information.
Madam Chair, on point.
Thank you, Mr. County Administrator.
Thank you.
Commissioner Caban.
Yeah, thank you.
Out of collegiality, I'll support this, but I think it's misleading. We keep using the term homestead because so many people in our community rent and they don't homestead. And I think we keep talking about homestead. There's a lot of folks in my district that rent mobile homes, that rent and that live in apartment complexes. And I think it's misleading how we're going through this process that we keep saying household. What is the value? What is the value for an apartment complex that's evaluated at $50 million? What is that value? What is that taxable income? How does that affect rent? These are questions I think that we should be asking. This is a direct correlation to affordable housing in our community. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Caban. So, Commissioner Maddox, your original motion is on the floor to accept options 1 and 2.
Right, but I did, Mr. Administrator, please send that information that's requested. Just
okay.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Vice Chair Welch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just real quickly, I appreciate everybody's sentiments up here. Commissioner Maddox, you articulate it very well. You have a great history up here. I get the whole vibe of we have lean years, we have up years, but at the same time, I completely respect Commissioner Caban's points here, because when we talk about not just a $15 million apartment complex and how that impacts rent, but think about a business owner's taxes. I thought they were going to say 30 cents on a 0.2 mil reduction. $31 is literally like 100 times more than I thought they were going to say. That's pretty significant, $31. I mean, again, we had this conversation in January where we're talking about nickels and dimes and how we can save people money. I just think that I would look very forward. I'm going to support the motion, and I'll look forward to the county administrator's feedback on that and what it would look like to do more substantial and how it would really truly impact services, because $5 million really accounts for the $3.6 million and the $1.3 million that we just approved between raises and capital improvements. I think it's an interesting conversation to have with a constituent. Say, hey, would you be willing to pay $31 more a year on your property taxes as a homesteaded citizen to pay for stormwater improvements and 5% across the board pay raises for county employees? But I think it'd really be a conversation to have with a guy who owns a $15 million apartment complex who's probably going to be paying $10,000 more in property taxes. I don't know if that's true or not, but you see what I'm saying? I think that will inform that conversation. And look, I think it's probably too late in the game at this point in the budgetary cycle, but I would like to ask our staff in the future budgets, we've got to find ways to give people breaks. I mean, truly and honestly, whether it's $31 or $10,000 to a property owner, because there is a snowball impact on our economy. When you talk about rents, when you talk about businesses being able to function, being able to stay successful, that money really goes a long way. And I'm not a business person. I'm just speaking, I just know my personal property taxes on my homesteaded home have gone up a lot, as well as my insurance premiums and everything else I have to pay for. And so I just think we need to be sensitive to that. And I think that one of the ways we can do that is by exercising restraint when it comes to things like pay raises and even capital improvements budgets. So I just want to make that clear. I'm not asking us to come back for a July budget workshop. I think that just getting some information on what a rate rollback would really truly look like could it help inform us in future years. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Okay, there's a motion on the floor to accept options 1 and 2. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Hearing none. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, Mr. County Administrator and staff. And I neglected to also recognize an attorney from the County Attorney's Office that's been with us today. Can you tell us who you are?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Emily Norton. I'm your Deputy County Attorney.
Awesome. So we have the Deputy County Attorney with us today. Thank you so much for being here.
Madam Chair,
Anything
point of
further?
information, please.
Okay, Commissioner Minor, then Commissioner Proctor.
Very good.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Really quick, Ms. Wanda, is this your last meeting with us? It is. I want to confirm that. And
We're still in the process of.
We just wanted to thank you for your long service here. And I know we talked about that quite a bit at the last meeting, but just wanted to thank you for everything. And
low millage, right.
But Ms. Wanda Hunter, you will be missed. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Proctor.
Madam Chair, I almost forgot, but I did remember because Commissioner Minor is on record to, what's our pay raise? Will County Commission receive a raise this year? Ours is not what we voted for here.
Will who receive a raise?
The County Commission.
Oh, we can't vote for it.
I'm asking, are any numbers back from the state?
We haven't seen any yet.
No.
Okay. So just for the record, Commissioner Minor wants to defer any raise to, what you want to give it to? So your wife can get mad. Go ahead and say
No. No.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Proctor. No, it's all good. So basically what I was saying, and I don't mean any animosity about this, is that we see firsthand the great work our county staff do. We really do. And my point was we all care about it, and that this is not, these dollars don't belong to us as individuals. They belong to the taxpayers. The COLA increase that you and I are going to get this year, that belongs to us. So what I was saying is that I was willing to forfeit that if you were. To show, well, you know what I mean. But anyway, there's no animosity about this. I was trying to make a point. I think I've made my point. I'm willing to do it. If you are willing to do that, sir, I will join you in that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Minor, and thank all the commissioners for your input. Thank you, County Administrator and staff. You guys did an awesome job as always. And the meeting, I'm sorry, Ms. Wanda, I was surprised to see you this morning. And I think it was a pleasant surprise. But congratulations again on your retirement. I know you will enjoy it. And we want to just wish everybody the best. Commissioner O'Keefe still in our prayers. And we'll be in touch. Thank you, guys.
Madam
Meeting
Chair,
adjourned.
just real quick, you did an excellent job today. This wasn't the easiest budget workshop to get through. Lots of conversation, lots of back and forth.
Well, thank you.
You had to use the gavel a couple times. Just want to let you know you did an awesome job today.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey,
Vince.
no hard feelings.